I used to shower with my bedroom door open just a crack. For whatever dumb reason, the tiny, cramped apartment bathroom that I've had to deal with for the last 9 years or so loves to steam and fog up, even with the water on warm instead of hot. And since my crappy as hell landlord refused to fix the ceiling-mounted fan, which would have ventilated the room, along with the fact that it caused the ancient off-white paint to sweat and start developing mold patches, something which he would have charged me to clean, I made the decision to leave the door open a bit to allow the steam to escape. For almost a decade, nothing out of the ordinary happened, and I went about my daily life. The habit became a routine. It was until 2 months or so ago. See, I was alone that day. My roommate had gone out for the day to take part in some bowling tournament, and I had the run of the place for the next 4 to 6 hours, as it was my day off from work. I decided to start it off with a hot, long, relaxing shower. So I grabbed a fresh set of towels from the small closet next to my bedroom, stepped inside, and after turning on the water to let it warm up, I hopped in. I just lathered the soap up in my hair when I heard a noise come from just outside. It was almost masked by the sound of the water splashing down on the floor of the tub, but it was out of place enough that I caught it. Scrape. It was similar to the sound that you'd hear if you dragged long fingernails down the wall. I froze, the shampoo dripping down over my face, making it difficult to see anything. The sound came again. Scrape. For a moment, the thought of someone breaking in flashed through my mind. I mean, after all, the neighborhood I live in has the nickname of Methpire for a reason, but if someone had broken a window or forced the lock, I would have heard it. The place isn't exactly big enough to miss those sounds. I finally opened my mouth. Tyler? Instantly, the sound, which had begun to repeat a third time, ceased. The entire place had gone silent, save for the water. I felt a small amount of annoyance zap through me. Tyler, this better not be another one of your games, I thought, as I hurriedly washed the shampoo out of my hair. My roommate had a habit of being a horror junkie, and delighting in attempting to play pranks on me, knowing that I had a tendency to be a little jumpy. Without shutting off the water, I reached out, grabbed the towel off the rack, and stepped out, wrapping it around my waist. Tyler, I swear to God, if this is another attempt to scare me, I'm gonna kick your ass, I called, striding across the tiled floor and yanking the door all the way open. I looked around. There was nobody in the living room, or the kitchen, which opened off of it. I glanced around, and then just to ease my mind, I walked, first to my bedroom, then to Tyler's, looking in. Both were empty, and there wasn't exactly any place for someone to quickly hide in either. Okay. Must have been hearing things. Shrugging my shoulders, I turned and jumped back into the shower to finish up. That evening, when Tyler came back home from celebrating a win with his bowling team, apparently having blitzed the competition, I decided to question him as we sat in the kitchen table eating Chinese takeout. Hey Ty, I asked casually, glancing up from my chopsticks. Yeah? He mumbled through a mouthful of his food, causing me to roll my eyes at his lack of manners. You didn't happen to come home earlier today, did you? He looked up at me, a slightly perplexed expression on his face. Nah, man. I was at the alley until 3, and out drinking with the boys till 5. Why? I searched his face. The guy had a tendency to chew a little too much when he was bullshitting. It was a tell that I'd learned a spot of his, thanks to endless nights of playing poker. No reason, just thought I'd heard something while I was in the shower this morning. I looked at him, smirking slightly. Thought you might have come back to grab something you needed, and decided to try and pull one over on me again. He let out a huge burp in response, then reached forward and grabbed his bottle of Coke, tilting it back and taking a swig. No, man, he said simply, using the back of his sleeve to wipe his lips. Besides, if I'd come back and tried to scare you, you'd have known it. He let out a laugh, attempting to imitate Vincent Price. After a moment of studying him, I shared it. He was clearly telling the truth. Yeah, I guess you're right, bro, I said, dropping my chopsticks into the empty container and hawking it over my shoulder into the trash can. He leaned back and, using his own empty container, feigned being a basketball player and acted like he was making a free throw. The container bounced off the edge, making us both laugh. I pushed what had to be a trick of my mind out of my head, and the two of us spent the rest of the night playing video games and downing beers. The next week went by without any strange noises, and I almost completely forgot about the strange incident. Ty had gone out for the evening on a date, and after binge-watching all 3 Creature from the Black Lagoon movies, I flicked the television off and headed for the shower. Hopping in, I softly hummed the Jane Mansfield song, Too Hot to Handle, and lathered myself up with soap. I just got the shampoo in my hair when I heard the scraping sound again. This time it was a bit louder, and I knew it hadn't been my imagination either. I became still as a statue, my head under the water and blurred between it and the shampoo slowly being rinsed out of its own accord. I held my breath, listening. The sound came again, this time instead of on the wall, the scrape clearly came from the doorframe to the bathroom. I felt my heart thudding hard in my chest, and my eyes widened as I saw a shadow filter through the shower curtain. It was the shadow of the bathroom door, slowly opening. I found my voice. "Who's out there?" I called, attempting to sound as tough and authoritative as I could. Just like last time, the moment I spoke up, all the movement and sound ceased, the apartment going silent. This time, however, the air felt charged, as if the tension in it were palpable enough to be cut with a knife. I reached out, wrapping my fingers around the edge of the curtain as I grabbed the closest thing I could find as a weapon, a bottle of shampoo. It was pathetic and likely wouldn't faze any intruder, but still better than nothing. Taking a deep breath, I wrenched the curtain back, the sound of the hook scraping on the metal pole almost sounding like a scream in the quiet. Just like last time, there was no sign of a soul. The only thing that had given away anything had changed was that the bathroom door was indeed standing fully open. The darkened outline of the living room beyond made me feel uneasy. I couldn't place why, but it almost felt as if the gloom held a threatening atmosphere. Shutting off the water, I hopped out and wrapped the towel around my waist. Stepping to the doorway, I reached out into the darkness and felt around until my fingers found the light switch. Instantly, the dark was banished away by the bright light overhead. I could see that nobody was in sight in the living room. This time, however, I wasn't taking any chances. Water still dripping off of me, I strode across the living room to where I dropped the belt I wore when on the job as a plumber. I reached down and pulled a rather large pipe wrench from it, gripping it with a wet and admittedly slightly shaky hand. The kitchen was clearly devoid of life, and I focused my vision on the 2 bedrooms, which lay dark. My door was wide open, but Ty's was half closed. I glanced at the hook on the wall, noticing his car keys weren't hanging next to mine. He's not home, which means... Shit. I felt my muscles tense up. I seriously didn't want to deal with some homeless junkie who'd somehow gotten himself inside and was searching for something to steal, or worse, waiting to attack me in some drug-fueled rage. I forced myself to speak loudly and in as tough of a voice as I could. "Hey, I'm warning you. If anyone's in here, I am armed." I didn't add the fact that it was a wrench, not a gun. If you come out and just leave, this will go a lot easier. Silence. The only sound I could hear was a car passing outside. I called again. Look, I'm in no mood for this, so come out. Get the hell out of this place. Still nothing. But I felt an odd sensation. One which caused the hairs on my arm to stand up straight. It was the feeling of being watched. My eyes caught a flicker of movement. A shadow seemed to draw back away from my roommate's door. I knew right there and then I should have called the cops, but some dumb sense of bravado had come over me, and I wanted to be like those tough guys in older movies, taking care of things themselves. Okay, this is your final warning, I called. After about 20 seconds of more silence, I drew in a deep breath, raised the wrench as high over my head as I could, and letting out a bellowed yell that was more Tarzan than Clint Eastwood, charged the bedroom door as if I was simultaneously a football linebacker and an Olympic torch carrier. I burst into the room, the door smashing into the wall behind it with a sickening crunch of plaster breaking. I shot my free arm out and wrenched the light switch up. The room was empty. Ty's scattered clothes, records, and game cases lay strewn about the floor like always. I looked around. The closet. Each of us had a small walk-in closet on the far wall. Taking another deep breath and still holding the wrench above my head like a caveman's club, I strode to the sliding door and grabbed the handle, yanking it open with a scream of protest from its track. I forced aside the clothes hanging on the rack. Nothing. As I stared at the back wall, the feeling of being stared at came again. This time from almost directly behind me. I swear I could actually feel someone, or something, breathing down my neck. Moving on pure instinct, I pivoted around and swung the wrench with all the strength I had. Yet nothing. There was nobody behind me. The actual hell is going on here? As I stood there feeling as though something had been behind me and had simply dematerialized out of existence, when I turned and swung, I heard the sound of a key in the front door and then the laughs of Ty and what had to be his date as they stepped inside. I'm telling you, you did great at darts, babe, Ty exclaimed. Both of them stopped and stared at me as they reached his bedroom door. I know I must have looked weird standing in his room wearing only a towel and holding a wrench. After a moment of silence, he spoke. Jimmy? Boy, what the hell are you doing? I blinked a few times, trying to find my voice. Finally, I spoke. I swear I heard someone in here, man, I said, my voice trailing off slightly. I saw the two of them exchange nervous looks. What do you mean, dude? He asked, his eyes looking around. I mean, I heard the exact same sound as last time, only this time the bathroom door swung open, I came out, I thought I heard someone moving around in your room, and I came in here, I replied, feeling confused and embarrassed. I could tell he believed that I'd heard something. To ease my worries, he had his date sit in the room, and together we swept the place, looking in every closet, under both beds, but we found no trace of anyone. I shook my head as he prepared to go into his room. I don't get it, I muttered. He patted me on the shoulder. I think the bathroom door must just be a bit loose on its hinges, yeah? He said, trying to reassure me. I'll check it out in the morning. Go dry yourself off, get some sleep. He punched me lightly in the arm. Hey, no more scary movies late at night for you, okay? You're starting to hear things go bump in the night for real. He let out a laugh, one which I mirrored, but I didn't feel. The feeling of eyes on me had vanished, but the apartment still held an uneasy atmosphere. It remained as I dried off, dressed into a pair of pajama bottoms, and climbed into bed. I could hear Ty in the next room doing exactly what I figured he'd be doing with his date, and I rolled my eyes. Hearing that shit gets old after a while. Still, I reached out, grabbed the remote, flicked on the small TV on my bureau to block out the noise. It took a very long time to drift off to sleep that night. When I did, my dreams... nightmares, actually, were of a dark, shadowy figure creeping slowly towards my bathroom door. The sounds of the shower spilling out from it. As it reached out to push open the door, I snapped awake, sitting straight up in bed with a sheen of sweat covering my body. For the next 2 weeks, I tried as much as possible not to stay alone in that place. I only showered when I could hear my roommate moving around in his room or out in the living room. Whenever I knew Ty was going out for any reason, I'd either find an excuse to join him or just go out and do something in town. The sense of being watched hadn't returned after that night, but I wasn't taking any chances. Something about the place just felt like it had changed. Something almost imperceptible, which I couldn't nail down, but it seemed to do the trick, as nothing weird or creepy happened. And then, one day as I was sitting in a cafe sipping coffee, my phone rang. I pulled it out of my pocket and saw it was my boss calling. Great. My day off. I thought, exasperated. Then I hit the button to answer it. Yeah? Instantly, I heard the gruff voice of Rick, my boss on the other end, yelling to someone else. No! Steven, how many times do I have to tell you? Counterclockwise! His voice got louder, indicating he must have lifted the phone back to his ear. James, you there? Yeah, I replied simply. He let out a sigh. Look, I know it's your day off, but we're over here at the Bannerman property and 2 of the pipes burst. He let out a long groan of frustration. One of them's real bad. I'm able to get one of them fixed, but our new employee... His voice took an undisguised tone of disgust. Decided to make it worse by fucking the pipe up, he finished, letting a moment of silence spread out before speaking again. So I apologize, but I need you to come in. You'll get paid overtime, of course. I nodded, more to myself than anything, then let out a sigh of my own. Yeah, okay. I'll be in. So let me swing by my place to pick up my tools. Yeah, don't forget to quickly hit the shower before coming over, he quickly added. You know, old Bannerman gets pissy about anyone not being freshly clean coming in here, he snorted. I'll never understand germaphobes. Anyway, I'll expect you to be here in 30 minutes. And with that, he hung up before I could say anything. Not that I could, anyways. At the mention of a shower, I felt my body tense up. I knew Ty was out. His bowling team was currently hosting a tournament the next town over, which would mean that I'd have to shower in the empty apartment. And that's something I really did not want to do. But I didn't have a choice. If I just grabbed my tools and slipped into my jumpsuit, I'd get chewed out first by old man Bannerman, and then Rick for not following orders set down by both of them after being contracted to repair and replace the pipes of this huge, sprawling mansion. Sighing, I paid for my coffee and I drove back to the apartment. When I opened the door, I had a momentary flash of panic. I thought the atmosphere I'd sensed before would return as soon as I stepped inside, but the apartment felt normal. Cloudy light filtering in through the half-open kitchen and living room blinds. I looked around and shook my head. Stop being such a baby, Jimmy. There's nothing in here. Nothing except you. You'll be fine. Just take a shower and book it. Feeling determined, I strode across to my room, gathering my undershirt and jumpsuit. For peace of mind, I also grabbed the same wrench that I held that night from the belt hanging over the arm of the couch, and I carried it into the bathroom with me, placing it on top of the pile of clothes sitting on the toilet. For a moment, I debated on just closing the bathroom door, but as before, shook it away and left it ajar. Ty should have fixed the hinges by now anyway. I reached into the shower and turned the water on, waiting for it to warm up. After I saw the steam begin to rise from over the curtain, I stepped inside, grabbing the bar of soap and quickly beginning to lather myself up. I rinsed with no problems, then grabbed the shampoo and lathered my hair, and as I dug my fingers into my scalp, the soap began to drip down into my eyes, obscuring my vision. That's when I heard the scraping sound again. Only this time it was much louder and more pronounced than any time I had heard it before. I felt a chill run up my spine. Despite the hot water, it came again just outside the bathroom door. I took a deep breath. "Tyler!" I called out, thinking the sound would stop it as it had before. This time, however, it didn't. Instead, I heard it get louder, sounding almost as if it were being done on the bathroom door itself. I felt my breath catch in my throat as I saw the dark shape of the door swing open, and then the bathroom lights flick off, plunging me in the darkness. There was still a little light flickering in from the living room, but everything was now shrouded in gloom. What the fuck? My heart was thundering in my chest as I slowly stepped back. I knew the distance from the edge of the tub to where my wrench lay on the toilet lid was less than 2 feet. I could reach out and snatch it in a heartbeat. The scraping came again, the sound causing my ears to begin ringing softly. It came from inside the bathroom somewhere, near the door, and then it stopped entirely. Aside from the sound of the water running, the apartment fell silent. Not a deadly silent, not a tension-filled silence, just silent. I stared for the longest time. It had to be only about 15 seconds, but what felt like 2 hours at the dim outline of the open door. I saw nothing. I turned to pull the curtain next to me back. I felt my heart stop. The dark outline of a figure stood almost directly on the other side of the curtain, less than a foot from me. If it had been any closer, it would have pressed into the curtain itself. It stood completely motionless, though I could tell it was looking in my direction from the feeling washing over me in waves. Sending a tsunami of fear through me. I couldn't tell whether it was a man or a woman. The opaque curtain masked its features. My breath came out in a ragged gasp, and I involuntarily let out a whisper of, "Oh, fuck." And that's when it lunged at me. I let out a loud scream as the curtain pressed in against its weight, wrapping around it and subsequently me as I saw arms reaching out to grab me. The momentum of it smashing into me caused me to slip on the shower floor, and I went flying backwards. My head smashed into the faucet, causing me to let out an involuntary cry of pain and stars to flash in my vision as I fell to the floor of the tub. It was still there. I could feel it on top of me, pinning me down, but it never let out a single noise. Something sharp jabbed into my leg, and I let out a howl at the explosion of pain that came from my thigh. Another pierced my shoulder, and I kicked out of the figure that was inches from my face. I felt it connect with something, but it seemed to have no effect. Another stab of pain came from my shoulder at whatever it was using, a weapon or claws jammed into the wound that it had already made. I kept screaming, praying one of my neighbors might hear the commotion as I thrashed around, trying to wedge myself into a position where I could reach out. I heard furious knocking coming from the front door, but the noise sounded like it was a mile away. "Help me!" I screamed as loudly as I could, still futilely lashing out. Just as I began to feel woozy from the blood loss, I felt my hand brush the edge of the toilet seat, and with it, the cold metal handle of my wrench. Grabbing it, I swung out with all of my remaining strength, aiming for the head of my attacker and feeling it connect with something. It seemed to stumble a bit at the blow, and I used that precious second to wrench myself out from underneath it, tumbling over the edge of the tub and onto the floor. I heard it thrashing about with the shower curtain, furiously tearing at it in an attempt to get to me, but I was stumbling to my feet, noting, as I did, the amount of blood falling to the floor. I struggled to the front door as I heard it finally break free, crashing into the bathroom floor, but still remaining silent. I unlocked the door and tore it open, revealing the concerned faces of my next-door neighbor. When he saw my condition, his face paled. Before I had a chance to say anything, I yelled, adrenaline kicking the pain and blood loss from dropping me. "I'm being attacked, it's in there!" Pointing back towards the bathroom, grabbing me, he pulled me into his open apartment door, slamming it closed and locking it. He quickly brought me a bathrobe and bandages, attempting to stop the bleeding as he called the police. As he did, I could hear the sounds of it tearing through the apartment, doing God only knows what. The commotion continued until I heard the wail of sirens coming down the road, at which point I heard my apartment fall silent. A few moments later, I heard the thundering of footsteps pounding up the stairs to the second floor, followed by the yell of officers. After a few moments, my neighbor and I heard the knocking at his door. "Police!" I was helped to an ambulance, where I was taken to the hospital. In addition to splitting open my scalp on the faucet, I'd been cut up pretty bad. Though by what, the doctors couldn't tell me. They couldn't even tell themselves. It's the damnedest thing, one told me after I'd woken up after the surgery. If it hadn't been for the fact that you'd seen a person, I would have said you were attacked by an animal. It looked like puncture wounds from claws. The police never found a trace of what had attacked me. I already knew they wouldn't. If it wasn't a man who attacked me, it hadn't even been human. The case is still open to this day, though. I've long since stopped getting updates from the detectives in charge of the case. Tyler and I moved out of the apartment as soon as I left the hospital. He chose to stay at his new girlfriend's house while I recovered. He was under the belief that I was attacked by an intruder, as is everyone else. I parrot that line whenever anyone asks about it. It's easier that way. You know, I'm trying to explain what I know won't be believed. And that's why I'm posting this here. I feel like there's a need to tell someone what actually happened that day. It's a place I know it'll be believed, or at least I won't be called nuts. I figure simply appeared on the other side of the curtain. I never saw it cross the room. And I know, even in the dark, I would have. And even then, nothing human could possibly have been that silent. I also know that someone else moved into that apartment since, though I don't know who they are. I pray they won't ever receive a visit from whatever that thing was. Tyler and I are now renting a nice, relatively cheap 2-bedroom house a few miles away from that place, and I've never felt the sensation of being watched again. I've thankfully never heard the scraping sound return. At least, not in my waking hours. I still hear them in my dreams, though. I still see that shape standing just on the other side of the curtain in the dark. It'll likely stay there until the day I'm on my deathbed. I always feel tense now. When I step into the bathroom to wash myself, I thankfully always felt safe. I don't shower with the door ajar. No, not anymore. I make sure it's firmly closed and locked before I undress, and I hop in. Like I said, I've always felt safe in my new place, but I'm not taking any chances. Because I don't know if it's trapped in that apartment, or if it can leave whenever it wants. It was about this pink thing, like your typical kid show where random stuff happens just to teach a lesson or moral, or sometimes the characters just act silly for a few minutes. I remember one episode where it did the laundry, even though Sleddy doesn't wear clothes. Another where it looked for food, and one where it played hide and seek. I mean, you get the idea. That's the kind of show it was, but badly made. Even as a kid, I had the feeling it was off. Not different and cool, just cheap. And trust me, my critical thinking back then was garbage. I watched anything that was on. A few days ago, I found some old VHS tapes from when I was a kid, and among them were a few Sleddy episodes. It seemed impossible, but they're even worse than I remembered. In some parts, you can literally see the cardboard and even someone's hand moving the puppets. But the most disturbing part is the plot lines. There's something off about them. Things happen that, if you stop to think about it, are seriously unsettling. Maybe because it was a kid's show, no one ever paid close attention, or stop to look for any hidden meaning. The reason I'm sharing all of this is because, well, because I'm scared. If anyone remembers anything or has information, please just share it with me, because I need to know I'm wrong. Let me explain. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, but there was this one episode with a shark character. He ends up drowning. Around the same time this episode aired, I remembered a very well-known news story about a boy around my age who drowned. And in the photo for the article, he was wearing a shark t-shirt. Another episode shows a character hiding in a well during a game of hide-and-seek, and they never found him. That episode aired around the same time a real boy fell into a well. I mean, you see where I'm going with this? I also found an episode where an orange flower dies. And in my neighborhood, there was this little girl, loved Sleddy, right? Her mom used to call her Little Orange Flower, and as you can probably guess, she disappears. That exact episode, it's been re-uploaded online. I'm going to post a bit of it here. It's missing a few parts. Quality's terrible. It's the best I've found. I don't know how to digitize my VHS tapes, so if someone can help, I do plan to upload them. But back to what's really bothering me. There's this episode that feels, I don't know, personal? I have a pretty unusual last name. Velcro. And in a Sleddy episode, there's a family with that same last name. The father loses his job, they have no money. Sleddy shows up, helps them by taking one of the children away so the rest of the family can survive until things get better. Now guess who almost got kidnapped as a child? Shortly after his father lost his job. Yeah, exactly. That was over 20 years ago. I shouldn't still be thinking about it. If there really were some lunatics making this low-budget show and then targeting kids, it was ages ago. There shouldn't be any link to me whatsoever. I didn't even remember the show until a few days ago, but while I was going over the tapes, my young son saw the last episode and said, "That character looks like you, Dad." He was pointing at the father character, Mr. Velcro, in the show. And today I got fired. I mean, I know I'm being paranoid, but now I'm scared. I'm scared one of these coincidences might happen again. I'm what you would call a savant. Numbers appear like shapes to me. And for instance, if you were to ask me, what is the square root of 3,365? I would immediately picture 3,365 as some sort of three-dimensional hovering pyramid. By studying its shape and even its pale pink color, I can almost immediately tell that the square root of 3,365 is 58.009. The math, it just clicks into place. It's really hard for me to explain, but I can use my imagination, shapes, to process almost any equation. I've always been able to. The mental talent of mind is what's landed me my many scholarships, bursaries. I'm even on track for a pretty cushy tenure position at a university. Life's been pretty generous overall as a result. And I wish it could have stayed that way. But then I had the car accident. And my ever-useful imaginary shapes became something more awful. I was driving back from Seattle feeling smug about my speech at a large college. I felt like I had effectively disproven Galileo's theory of polynomial equations in a room full of the country's top mathematicians. And then my car flipped over, just like that. Car accident. Never saw it coming. Don't remember it to this day. I woke up in the hospital with my legs and back in horrific pain. A nurse must have noticed my movement because the next thing I knew, a doctor came up and asked me how I was doing. All I could manage was a moan. The doctor nodded and asked if I could count to 10. I pursed my lips, did my quivering best. 1, 2, 3. When I reached 4, I noticed a translucent pyramid forming in the corner of my eye. It was really strange, like one of my imaginary shapes, except it had appeared all on its own. 5, 6, 7. The ghostly pyramid began to spin, approaching me slowly. 8, 9, 10. The doctor nodded, jotting something down, and then the triangular shape drifted closer and closer. I could practically hear the pyramid whirling by my bedside. Hearing the imaginary shapes. Now that was new. I squeezed my eyes shut and groaned through my teeth. Understandable, the doctor said. They'll give you something for the pain. When I opened my eyes, the pyramid was gone. Over the next few weeks, as I recovered in the hospital, whenever anyone mentioned any sort of number in any way, the shapes would appear. All on their own. It wasn't a pyramid. Sometimes it was cubes. It was cylinders. Triangular prisms. They would all hover in front of my eyes like tiny floaters you might see on your eyeballs staring up at the sun. Except they weren't floaters. They were more like 3D holograms that only I could see. I asked the doctor if I had some kind of brain trauma, something that could give me hallucinations. But they said not to worry. Our minds often produce little stars and optical artifacts after a hard bonk on the head. Should all fade away in less than 6 months. 6 months came and went. It got worse. The shapes began to group together. One long rectangular prism would form a brow, and then an oblique spheroid would form a mouth. 2 small, shimmering diamonds would form eyes. I mean, that's right, the shapes, they started making a face. I was actually having lunch with the university's dean, explaining just how ready I was to return to the workplace when I first saw the horrifying face thing. It assembled itself and hovered right next to the dean's head. I'm sorry, you've had to reduce your salary, but it's all probationary. I hope you understand. It won't affect your 403B plans unless... David? Hello? You with me? The shapes all furrowed, resulting in a very demonic expression. 2 cones appeared and acted as horns. David? What is it? I clutched my eyes shut and breathed through my palms. Only after a minute of blinding myself did the faceling disappear. Are you alright? Strong metallic taste filled my mouth. I pushed away from the dean's desk and threw up. After several awkward minutes and apologizing profusely, I explained that it must have been my concussion acting up. The dean nodded with a resigned frown. Right. Let's give it some more time. But time only made things worse. Not long after, in the middle of the night, I was awoken by the sound of a wind chime. Delicate, ephemeral wind chimes. A dark shadow crossed behind my dresser, and I recognized that same hovering faceling. The eyes were gleaming. It inched out, warping its ovoid mouth as if to mimic the shapes of talking. The voice was the most sterile, synthetic tone I'd ever heard, as if a computer had mimicked the voice of another computer, which had been mimicking the voice of another computer, which had been mimicking the voice of another computer ad infinitum. "Show me," the words came warbling. I sprung up in a cold sweat. "What?" "Show me." I closed my eyes, stuffed in my AirPods with white noise on full blast. It was the only way to ignore the voices that weren't really there. I thought all these shapes had to just be in my head, right? Since I was a child, my trick for falling asleep was to count sheep, so that's what I did. 1, 2, 3. The adorable cartoon sheep in my mind's eye began to morph, their wool shredded out into long strands of barbed wire, shimmering angular wire that lengthened with each number I counted. After 8, I stopped counting. The barbed wire collapsed and coiled around the bleeding mammal's soft flesh. I could hear the shrieks of death. "No!" I threw off the covers and stood up in my room. The translucent faceling hovered with an evil smile above my bed. "Get the fuck away! Get the fuck out of my head!" The faceling opened its mouth, and I could see new barbed wires floating out of its throat, undulating like little snakes. I ran out of my house. The rest of the night was spent walking around the university grounds until the cafe opened. Insomnia became my new friend. I didn't know how to make the visual hallucinations go away. All I knew was that if I interacted with numbers, like if I heard them, say them, especially counted them, the faceling became worse. Paying all my hospital bills resulted in giving the faceling a torso. Filing away all my old math work gave the faceling long, insect-like arms. Dialing the number for the psychiatrist gave it a long, tubular tail. I've had many sessions with my shrink now, draining what little was left of my bank account to try and rewire my head to stop seeing this horrible nightmare. "Just embrace it," my shrink finally said. "Embrace it? I've tried everything to make it go away. Why don't you listen to what it wants?" "What do you mean?" "It could be your subconscious trying to purge something. If you just let it run its course, it could finally leave you alone." I thought about what the faceling wanted. All it ever said was, "Show me," which never made any sense because what could I possibly have to show? "Can you draw it?" my shrink asked at the end of my session. "Maybe if I could see what you're seeing, I could be more of use." And then everything fell into place. It wanted to show itself. The faceling wanted to be presented. It was saying, "Show me." I drew some rough sketches of a snake creature with a demon face, bug legs. The psychiatrist admitted that it looked pretty unsettling, but she and I both knew an amateur drawing wasn't its true form. No, its true form was what all of its body parts created when added together, what all the math counted up to. The equation. My connection with the university is tenuous at best. As my mathematical brilliance had not quite returned to its previous state, the faculty was not exactly excited to have me back, but when I told them that I had a breakthrough, that I discovered a formula to end all formulas, they let me have a guest lecture at the STEM hall. A couple curious students trickled in for my lecture. Some of the old professors sat in the back. I explained that I would reveal my theory once I had written it all down on the whiteboard behind me. It would make better sense that way. No sooner had I finished talking when the demon faceling crawled up a few feet away from me. The awful thing had grown into a monstrous 10-foot scorpion with a curved, pyramidal stinger. It was hard not to shudder from the sight of it, but I stood my ground. "I'm not afraid of you," I said to myself. The faceling didn't look threatened. In fact, it appeared overjoyed because it knew what I was doing. It calmly glanced at its colors and angles. It wrote the measurements on the whiteboard. 73.46 was the square root of its spine. 406 was the surface area of its claws. 9.12 was the diameter of its fangs. The numbers grouped in a formula that felt as natural as the golden ratio, except instead of eliciting the feeling of completeness or beauty, I started feeling sick to my stomach. "What is it?" one of the professors asked from the back. "Is this related to Galileo's theorem?" I continued to write without stopping. I was in a flow state, and there was no room for second guesses. I heard gagging from the back. A few students were feeling sick. "David, what are these numbers? Bring us up to speed here." But I couldn't stop. My hand kept writing, even though the audience behind me started to writhe and vomit. I didn't look back for any glances. The math had to be written out. Are you bleeding? David, your eyes. What's happening to your eyes?" Warm, prickling liquid poured out from my tear ducts. I could see large red stains on my shirt. It wasn't tears. I squinted and gritted through the pain. The fiery heat in my vision was relentless, but I had to push forward. "For the love of God, David, what is this? They're passing out, the students! David, stop!" I added brackets, exponents, a couple Greek letters. I was channeling all the numbers from the faceling I could grasp. I understood them perfectly. On the very last line, my formula came to a close. Omega equals delta 4 times 23.666. "David, what is the meaning of this? What is this equation?" I wiped the blood from my eyes and cleared my throat. The lecture was filled with worried expressions and nausea. "It's a mathematical representation." "For what?" I didn't know how else to put it, so I just slipped out the word. "Evil." There came the screeching of 1,000 slaughtered lambs. Everyone's jaw dropped. The massive scorpion faceling, which had been translucent this entire time, suddenly became opaque. Everyone could see what I saw. "Jesus Christ! What in the world is that?" Like a tornado of violent shapes, the faceling lunged forward and gored the front row of attendees. Anyone who tried to run was skewered by its pyramid stinger. I froze in awe, stupefied by what I had wrought. The faceling skittered across the seats and punctured every supple neck it could find. I watched as it gripped the shoulders of the oldest professor I had known and then bit its head clean off. Blood spattered across the mahogany steps. Bodies crumpled to the floor. When the demon had finished its massacre, the face shapes reconfigured into a knowing smile. "I've been shown," it said. Then, as if struck by a breeze, all the triangles, pyramids, and cubes comprising the creature broke apart. They shot past me through the window on my left. Glass shattered. and I watched as the raw arithmetic drifted out into the sky. The shapes had soared out like a storm of hail. Though the university was on lockdown for weeks after the occurrence. The incident, to this day, has never been released to the public. 6 students and 3 professors had been killed by something the authorities internally called a disastrous force, though outwardly they just called this a shooting. I pretended I too had passed out. I had no explanation for what happened. But I know what I did. I'd removed the equation from my mind, and I'd spilled it out into the world. Like a useful fool, I had inadvertently spread this evil. I posted this here so that others could be warned. If anyone encounters a strange set of numbers on a calculator, a spreadsheet that feels off, or a rogue pyramid spinning out in the middle of your vision, let me know. Whatever this entity is, it thrives on digits. It thrives on math. It wants to use arithmetic to spread itself and wreak untold havoc. Whatever you do, don't interact with it. Don't look at it. Don't listen to it. And for God's sake, if you think something is wrong, if you had a car accident and you see shapes, do not count to 10. It only makes it worse. When my daughter Emma died in 2009, I thought the worst pain was over. I was wrong. She was only 10. Hit by a drunk driver while riding her bike in front of our house. I don't need to describe the hell that followed. I mean, if you lost a child, you already know it. If you haven't, then thank whatever God you believe in. The first voicemail came on what would have been her 24th birthday. It was 3:16 a.m. and my phone buzzed. I was already awake. Insomnia has been on my shadow since we buried her. I recognized the number instantly. It was hers. We'd kept her phone plan going for a while after her death, just to hear her voice on the voicemail. And eventually we canceled it. Or I thought we did. The message was only a few seconds long. Dad. And then static. I sat up in my bed. Not a glitchy AI sound, not some kind of kid playing a prank. That was Emma. Soft and confused, just like she used to sound when she woke up from a nightmare. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I didn't tell anyone. The next night it happened again. Dad, are you still mad at me? Static. Then silence. I stopped checking the messages for a few days, thinking if I didn't listen, it would stop. But it didn't. They came every night at 3:16 a.m. exactly, always from her old number, always her voice. I finally gave in and listened to all of them. Some of them were whispers that I couldn't make out. Some were just sobbing. One night, she said, "I'm cold. It's so dark here." I took the phone to the police. The officer was sympathetic but firm. Probably a scam, maybe some kind of sick hacking. Said that they'd look into it. They never called me back. I contacted the phone company. Their number had been reassigned to a teenager in Wisconsin. I spoke to his mother. She said he hadn't used the phone in months. He lost it. Around the same time the voicemails started. My therapist told me it was grief. Unresolved trauma. That my brain was just playing tricks on me. But here's the thing. Emma said something in her last voicemail that shattered any doubt. It was June 3rd. The anniversary of her death. And the message was longer this time. Dad, I saw you by the bike. I tried to yell. I waved. You looked right through me. Then pause and... Why did you pretend you couldn't see me? I hadn't told anyone I visited the exact spot that day. Not my sister, not my ex-wife, no one. And I did think I saw something. A flicker in the corner of my eye, a small figure in a blue jacket, the same one that she was wearing that day, but when I turned, nothing was there. I told myself it was my imagination. But then came the final message 2 nights ago. It was different, it was louder, more alive. Daddy, I'm not supposed to talk to you anymore. He's getting mad. Static. Static crackled like fire, and then I heard a new voice. Not Emma's, it was deep and slow and wrong, and it said, "Stop looking. You'll see us soon enough." And the line went dead. I smashed the phone. Yesterday I got a new number. New provider. Burned the old SIM, brand new phone, and still tonight at exactly 3:16 a.m. the phone buzzed. One new voicemail. From Emma. It's been 4 nights. I thought sharing this might help. I don't know. Maybe if I released it somehow, maybe give it shape, maybe that would make it stop. It didn't. The voicemails still come every single night, 3:16 a.m. Not a minute before, not a minute after. I used to bolt upright when it happened. Heart in my throat, breath caught, and now I just lie there and I wait for the buzz like a ritual. I don't listen anymore, not all the way through. I just let them pile up in my inbox, collecting like dust in a forgotten room. But last night I couldn't ignore it. It started with Emma's voice again, soft, wavering the way that she used to sound when she was trying to be brave but needed me. "I'm scared, Daddy," she said. "He's getting closer. I can't hide here much longer." And then static, sharp and sudden. It hurt my ears through the speaker, and then something I couldn't quite catch, a whisper, slurred or maybe layered over itself like multiple voices, saying the same thing, out of sync. Then I heard it. A clicking, like fingernails tapping glass, a slow, deliberate rhythm. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, 3. I didn't recognize the pattern, but it felt intentional, like something trying to signal or get my attention, and then it just stopped. Dead silence. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I waited for dawn like it was a promise. This morning I checked the house. Every window had scratches, thin, fine marks, like something sharp had traced lines across the glass. Some of them were so high up I needed a stepladder just to get a closer look. I mean, I live alone. I have no pets, no trees brushing the house, no explanation. And then out front, In the grass near the road. That road. I saw something caught on a low branch by the ditch where the accident happened. It was a piece of fabric. Blue. Faded denim. Torn in a pattern I knew too well. I ran inside, I climbed into the attic, yanked the old sealed storage box down with shaking hands. Her jacket. The one she wore the day she died, it was still inside. I kept it for the smell, the memory. It zipped in a vacuum bag, untouched since the funeral, and I opened it just to be sure. The tear in the shoulder. Matched exactly. But the one outside, it looked new, like it had just been ripped. No dirt, no weathering, no fading from sunlight, not even dew, fresh. It was fresh, clean fabric. This was the moment I stopped pretending I could logic my way through this. Tonight, actually just an hour ago, something changed. It wasn't a voicemail. It was a text from her number. Just 2 words. Come outside. No punctuation, no context, just that. And I won't lie, I stood there with my phone in my hand for what felt like forever, my thumb hovering over the screen like I was going to reply. My heart wasn't racing, I wasn't panicking. There was something worse, that warmth, that aching familiarity. It felt like her. It felt like those nights she used to crawl into bed after a nightmare, curl against my chest. Her breath slow, and even as she drifted back to sleep, I could almost feel her weight. Again, like her little hand tangled in my shirt. I almost opened the door, my hand. It was on the knob when a phrase someone had commented came back to me like a jolt of cold water. If she ever asks you to go somewhere, don't. I stopped. I turned off the porch light. I waited. And then I looked. Just a quick glance through the curtain, but I saw something. At the edge of my driveway, small, still, dressed in a blue jacket, her size, her shape. But too still. Like a photo standing upright in the dark. I blinked. It was gone. No sound, no movement, just the soft hum of the streetlight overhead and the sudden certainty that something out there knew I was watching. I don't know what this is anymore. I don't know if it's my daughter or something that remembers her better than I do, but I do know this. It wants to be let in, and it doesn't want to be ignored. I'll update again if I'm still here. I didn't sleep last night. I don't really know why. There was no buzzing at 3:16 a.m., no voicemail, no message, nothing at all. You'd think I'd feel relief, but instead I felt hollow. Like something was missing. Worse. Waiting. I sat in bed, phone in my hand, screen lit, nothing came. No notification, no blocked number, no whisper of her voice. Just the glow of the lock screen and the steady tick of the clock beside my bed. And yet, the dread didn't go away. This morning when I stepped out onto the porch, I found something on the doormat. A single Polaroid photo. No envelope, no note. No sign that anyone had been near the house. Just the photo. I stared at it for a long time before I picked it up. Something about it made my stomach twist, like I already knew what would be on it, like I'd already seen it before, maybe in a dream that I'd forgotten or a memory I never wanted to have. There was a picture of Emma's bike. The one she was riding when she died. Except the photo wasn't old. It wasn't from that day, I know, because the grass in the background still had the bare patches. I'd reseeded just a few weeks ago. My neighbor's car is in the driveway. The garbage bin's tipped the same way it was yesterday morning when the wind knocked it over. It was recent. The bike was propped on its kickstand at the edge of the road, right where the accident happened. The back wheel was bent, the seat was torn exactly as I remember it after the crash, but we don't have that bike anymore. We buried it, along with her. I checked the spot, there's nothing there. No tire tracks, no bike, no photo prints anywhere else. Just grass and silence and the faint smell of rain that never came. Inside, I set the photo on the table and stared at it for hours. I couldn't touch it again. My fingers itched to flip it, but I was scared of what might be there. And finally I did. The back was blank except for 2 words, written faintly in pencil. Not printed, they were written. And they were written in her handwriting. I remember. That broke something in me. I don't know if I'm supposed to remember something, or if she does, something I buried deeper than her jacket or the sealed boxes in the attic, something I don't want pulled into the light. I want to believe it's her so badly it hurts, but a memory doesn't knock on your door. It doesn't whisper through phone lines. It doesn't dig up a rusted bike and pose it like an offering. And tonight at exactly 3:16 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Not a voicemail. A FaceTime. From her number. And for 1 second, just before I declined it, the thumbnail preview showed something. Something from behind me. Something smiling. To whoever's reading this, you probably don't know who I am. But I'm sorry for what I've done to you. This will probably never make it to the public, but my guilt is eating away at me, and I feel like I'm all out of options. The least I could do is get this out there, so that maybe, hopefully, someone reads this and, more unlikely, takes this seriously. That way I'm not one of the few who know just how bad we messed up and what we've done to the world. I'm sure this will read like some nutjob's manifesto, but please hear me out. I think I've helped link our world to something else out there, and if humanity isn't careful, we're going to open a door and invite something to Earth that I'm pretty sure will end us in the blink of an eye. I know that's a lot, so let me backtrack. I was an archaeologist, and a damn fine one if I do say so myself. I specialized in decoding ancient writing. That probably helped with translating most of the more popular ancient texts out there, from Sumerian to Greek to Egyptian. So, when I get a call from a small, specialized team off in Egypt about wanting some text translated on a door in a recently uncovered tomb, I don't bat an eye, and I just book it to the next flight. I keep a diary of my findings, I keep it hidden, so the guys that got me quarantined haven't taken it. It's funny, I can read the words. I understand what they mean individually, but I can't piece together my own writing. It's like my mind immediately forgets whatever it is that I read. It's gotta be an effect of the tomb. But in any case, I've decided to painstakingly, word by word, transcribe my diary here. Hopefully you can make sense of it. Day 1. You'd think that after spending days in sand-swept dunes or remote ancient locations, you get tired of it. But here I am, writing from a tent just outside of a recently excavated tomb they found here in Gilfkabir. I'll admit I'm a little apprehensive. While the door to the tomb is fascinating, I'll get to that in a minute, I don't know how anyone would have found this thing in the first place. There was no tomb marker, no statues, absolutely nothing built into or around this plateau that would indicate a tomb was hidden here. If these guys weren't using some of the latest seismic tools to map out the land, there's no telling how much longer this thing would have stayed buried. I mean, I can understand, too, their eagerness to excavate and unearth this find. It's rare to get to see an untouched tomb nowadays, especially one so isolated from any others in the map. Makes me wonder if there's a whole cache of hidden tombs just waiting to be uncovered, to share their history. It's exciting. So, back to the door. It's massive. 2 20-foot or so slabs of deep black granite. That's my guess anyway, from what they've uncovered so far. They're still whittling away at the rock surrounding it, but the glimpses I see are still incredible nonetheless. It goes without saying, but I'm most fascinated by the writing on the doors. Every single inch of the stone uncovered so far has dense lines of script like the Rosetta Stone. It's weathered to all hell, but I can identify some hieroglyphics as well as ancient Greek. I can't make out full sentences yet, but from what I got so far, I can see something about a key or an origin of some sort, and something about riches. The guys seemed to work a little faster after I plucked that word. In any case, we got a lot of work ahead of us, but this seems promising. Day 5. It's been steady going, but we've been making progress on getting this door uncovered. Rick Wilson, the man leading this whole expedition, is a fair enough guy, making sure no one overworks themselves in this heat. Rick's picked a great team here. Between Jimmy, Susan, Frank, Jade, and myself, I can't think of a better team of cracking the secret of this tomb. I think we're all just excited to see what's on the other side. The only bad news so far is that years and years under soil it hasn't treated these slabs well. I'm having difficulty translating the full message transcribed. My best guess on what the writing on the door says is the key to nothing is resting here. Wealth there is none. Forgetting is a gift. Warnings are written all the time on tombs, often warning about curses or traps, but I haven't read one like this before. At our continued rate, we should have this door ready to go in a few days or so, weather permitting. Day 8. Today's the day! We got enough of the door uncovered to be able to open it. Seeing this jet black set of doors nestled into the rock really is quite imposing. The warning over and over inlaid in the door doesn't help either. Still, this isn't my first rodeo, so once we find a way to get these doors open, I'll report back later on what we've uncovered. Rick... Wait, I already wrote this. I never updated on what we found. Come to think of it, I'm drawing a blank on yesterday. I remember writing in my journal, we set up the equipment to force the doors open, and... nothing. Looking out of my tent right now, the doors remain closed. I need to investigate. So I just spoke to Rick, and he's also a bit confused. When I asked him how long we've been out here, he also thought it was still day 8. I showed him my phone's date. He seemed as puzzled as I was. We gathered everyone up, and sure enough, it's like an entire day was taken away from all of us. None of us remembered what happened when we forced the doors open or why it's back to being closed. I'd like to contribute it to the sweltering heat, but I know that's not true. Something's wrong. Rick paused all further attempts until we figure out what's going on. I'm going to go back through my notes to see if I missed anything on the translations. Between the 5 of us, someone's got to remember something. Day 10. I don't know who Frank is. I wrote about him on day 5, but I have no idea why I wrote that. I've asked the whole camp. They assume that it's always just been us 5, not 6. Everyone's drawing a collective blank on what happened the day we tried to open the tomb. Everything in our brains tells us it's stupid to try again, but at the same time, when we sit in silence checking our gear, the collective desire to try again is palpable. This isn't a group so easily willing to give up. Rick seems to be in the same boat and saying that we'll try again tomorrow. Something keeps bothering me. Everyone assures me that it's always been us 5. Well, why then did we set up an extra empty cot? Why do we have a bunch of extra supplies? And those supplies, why is there a photograph of a woman and her child that no one else recognizes? I don't think anyone wants to actually sit down and think about this. Day 11. Well, take 2 for the tomb today. I didn't want to wait until the day was over to begin writing. I'll chronicle as we go today. It's a little before dawn, and we set up our supplies ready to get into the tomb. Rick had brought a very interesting new piece of technology, one I haven't seen before. A crate of self-navigational micro-drones. According to Rick, these things can safely fly into an unknown space, and through a bit of 3D mapping capabilities, fully map the inside of a tomb in a matter of minutes. A part of me feels like it takes a little bit of the fun out of exploring a place that man hasn't set foot in for years, but I also recognize just how dangerous these places are. It looks like the team's getting ready to crack the door open and set the drones in. Once we have a good idea of what's in there, we'll head in. The drones took an hour to map the area. Rick seemed concerned slightly, explaining to me that he's never seen them take this long. When we opened up the laptop to look at the scanned area to say that we were stunned is, that's an understatement. This place is huge. If we were on an island off of Greece, I would have sworn this was the very maze that homed the Minotaur in the myths. The sheer time it would have taken to carve out the winding tunnels with multiple dead ends back hundreds of years ago is comparable to the pyramids hundreds of miles away. We were expecting a long trek in there, but at least we have a clear path to the central chamber. With luck, I'll update later today on our findings. The energy of the group is a little strange. There's excitement for sure, but I can't get my translation out of my head. Forgetting is a gift. It doesn't make sense. None of it does. Tomb, it's empty. It's kind of empty. So right after my last update, we went inside the tomb, and immediately entering, the solid black granite was much cooler than the outside Egypt heat. We used the map that the drones created and followed the winding path deeper inside. The only noise audible was the sound of our own footsteps against the solid stone. It really did feel like we were the first ones in there. The main room also showed no signs of anyone else before us, or maybe they just didn't leave a trace. I mean, it was a large room that seemed like it should be filled with priceless artifacts. But there was nothing except for the coffin. This goes against most Egyptian burials. They believe that you brought your possessions with you to the afterlife. Why were there none in this room? I mean, at first we thought that we had found the tomb of someone infamous, someone who did something so horrible the Egyptians wanted to forget about them, but opening the sarcophagus led to only more questions. It was empty. I still don't think anyone got to it before us, as it took us a lot of effort to pry open the lid to the strange sarcophagus seated in the dead center of the room. It, too, was made of a similar material to the doors and the walls. It was solid black granite. It wasn't carved into a person's visage like most sarcophagi, but instead covered in writing. I took plenty of photos, which I plan to review for translation soon. And once we got the lid open and peered inside, however, we were greeted with nothing. An empty black coffin. We searched the inside looking for a lever, a switch, writing, something. He was empty. The smooth, solid black of granite almost made it look like we were peering into an empty void. My conclusion? I think this was a tomb that never got filled. Something went wrong, and whoever was supposed to be buried here wasn't. Clearly it was someone not liked, so they went ahead and probably dropped him in a ditch, called it a day. While part of me is a little disappointed, this was still an interesting find, even if it's due to the irregularity of the tomb. Some of the others want to scope out some of the other dead ends to see if anything was missed before we wrap it up here and report our findings. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious to take another peek in there myself. Day 12. I couldn't sleep last night. Just as I felt like I was finally dozing off, it sounded like someone was mumbling or whispering in their sleep. I didn't recognize whose voice it was, and even when my eyes adjusted to the darkness of the tent, I couldn't see anyone's lips moving. Despite this, I've been making solid progress on my translation. A lot of it seemed to repeat the warning on the door. Some of the new stuff talks about a voice translated to your voice. It could also be my voice. I mean, it's tough to discern the context. I'll keep working on it. I think it may not have just been me who didn't get much sleep last night. Everyone's acting a little weird. This morning I saw Jade push Jimmy as he was bent over looking at our supplies. Now, naturally, Jimmy was pissed. What's weird, though, is that Jade was immediately apologetic, claiming she just had the urge to do it. It wasn't just her, though. I watched Rick purposely bend the antenna to one of the handheld radios we have, only to then try to fix it, cursing under his breath. I'm not sure what's going on. It happened to me, too. I was eating lunch, and I just poured out my water. I don't know why. It was like I had the thought to do it, and I really wanted to, so I did. I didn't do it involuntarily, at least. I don't think I did. I just chose to act on that thought. With how fast it came and went, though, it honestly felt like it wasn't even my own thought. I'm not sure what's gotten into me. Something's wrong with us. Susan came out of the tomb frantic. Her and Jimmy just went into the cave a half hour ago. Jimmy wasn't with her when she came out. Susan told us that Jimmy jumped. They were checking out some of the other branch paths, and they came across a pit, and she said they both stared at it for some time before he just leapt. Like he was diving into a swimming pool, she said. We were ready to head in and see what we could do to get him out, but she made it clear that after a few moments of silence, she heard him land. Then silence returned. Rick's made it clear no one's going back into the tomb, and he called the institution funding our dig to get us a ride out of the desert. While we wait for a ride to show up in the next few days, I'm going to try to translate more of this sarcophagus, mostly to keep my mind off of what's happening, but a piece of me also feels like this is important. There's something we missed. Day 13. What did we let out? I couldn't sleep last night, so at some point I must have scribbled what I wrote earlier. I'd be lying if I said I remember writing that, though. I think it's what I'm secretly afraid of, that was a sealed coffin. I'm not really superstitious, but what if we were cursed? I feel ridiculous writing that, but things they've only been getting worse. I keep getting strange little urges. Light all of our matches, rip a hole in our tent, draw a deep line in the sand with my foot. As fast as they arrive, they leave, but it's tough to act against them. I can see everyone on edge. They must be dealing with the same thing. I need to deal with my translations today. This might prove to be the distraction I need. He will be your voice, but your actions will be his. Everyone will be the key to the coming nothing. Who is he? What did we let out? Nothing? Nothing is coming. Is nothing a thing? Or a state that will reach? I'm going to keep this to myself. I don't want the rest of the crew freaking out. This doesn't sit right, though. He will have my voice, but my actions will be his. Is this what we're all experiencing? What's going on? Who is in my head? Whatever I wrote ends there. I can't remember much from our time by the tomb. Only bits and pieces. I can remember the tomb itself. I remember we opened it. My solid memory kicks up right when we were being driven back. The driver kept asking us if there were more people, but we were sure that there were only the 4 of us. He seemed to hesitate on that information, but if I'm being honest, the guy was a little weird anyways, driving us back to the base of operations. Kept swerving the car back and forth, just for the fun of it seemed. Everyone's been acting weird around us. It's subtle, but I've seen a guy impulsively kick over a waistband. Another guy he bit his cheek hard enough to bleed a little. Didn't take long for a few guys in suits to step in, ask us about what we remember down in the tomb. They've had us in quarantine for some time now, but I think whatever they're trying to quarantine, it's far too late. I've heard them use the term intrusive thoughts in passing, and I think that's the best way to describe what I've been feeling, these thoughts that I have. I wish I knew what to say. If this ever gets out there to whoever's reading this, please, you can't listen to that voice when it calls. I don't know what that voice is, what it's inching us towards with these little actions, but if a butterfly flapping its wings can cause a typhoon on the other side of the globe, I shudder to think what the small actions of the entire world might be leading to. I don't know where I heard this advice from, but I feel like it fits the situation. Just forget about those thoughts. Don't let your mind dwell on them. Sometimes forgetting is a gift.
Dexter, we're monogamous.
No, we're not.
The hell do you mean we're not? Since when are we not? Dexter moved away from the table and grabbed a new beer from the fridge.
Mia, are you messing with me right now?
Me? Messing with you? You're the one who's texting in front of my face. This whole thing blew up when I saw him message someone with a heart emoji, and it definitely wasn't his mom. Dexter's defense was that he was just texting his secondary, some girl named Sunny that I was supposed to know about.
Mia, why are you being like this?
Like what?
We've had this arrangement for over 2 years.
What arrangement? It was crazy talk. I couldn't believe he had the balls to pretend this was normal. I don't remember ever discussing a secondary person or whatever this is. He drank his beer, staring with his characteristic half-closed eyes as if I had done something to bore or annoy him.
Do you want me to get the contract?
What contract?
The contract that we wrote together, that you signed.
I was more confused than ever. Sure, yes. Bring out the contract. Wordlessly, he went into his room. I could hear him pull out drawers and shuffle through papers. I swirled my finger over top of my wine glass, wondering if this was some stupid prank his friends egged him into doing. Any minute now, he was going to come out with a bouquet and sheepishly yell, "April Fools!" And then I was going to ream him out because this whole gag had been unfunny and demeaning and stupid. But instead, he came out with a sheet of paper. It looked like a contract. Our polyamory relationship. Parties involved: Dexter, boyfriend; Mia, primary girlfriend; Sunny, secondary girlfriend. Date redacted. Respect the hierarchy. Dexter and Mia are primary partners, meaning their relationship takes priority in major life decisions, living arrangements, rent, etc. Dexter and Sunny share a secondary relationship. Oh, good. They reserve the right to see each other as long as it does not conflict with their primary relationship. All parties recognize that this is an open, ethical, non-monogamous relationship with mutual respect. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw my signature at the bottom. My curly QL looked pretty much spot on. But I didn't remember signing this at all. Dexter. I struggled to find the right word. His face looked unamused, as if he was getting tired of my kidding around. Dexter, I'm sorry. I don't remember signing this. He rolled his eyes.
Mia, come on.
I'm being serious. This isn't... I couldn't have signed this.
Couldn't have.
His sigh turned frustrated.
Listen, if this is your way of renegotiating, that's fine. We can have a meeting. I'm always open to discussion, but there's no reason to diss Sunny like that.
I was shocked at how defensive he was. Dexter, I'm not trying to diss anyone. I'm not lying. I swear on my mom's grave, my own grave. I do not remember Sunny at all. He looked at me with a frown and shook his head, more disappointed than anything.
Listen, we can have a meeting tomorrow. Just stop pretending you don't know her.
I didn't want to prod the bear, so I laid off him the rest of the evening. We finished our drinks, watched some TV, and then went to sleep. The following morning, Dexter dropped our weekend plans and made a reservation at a local sushi restaurant. Sunny was going to meet us there at noon for a renegotiation. I didn't know what to think. Over breakfast, I made a few delicate inquiries over Sunny, but Dexter was still quite offended. Apparently, this had been something all three of us had wanted. All three of us? I found it hard to believe, but didn't push it any further. Instead, I scrounged through the photos on my phone where I immediately noticed something was wrong. There was a new woman in all of them. It was hard to explain. It's like Someone had individually doctored all my old photos to suddenly fit an extra person into each one. It was unsettling, to say the least. Dexter and I had this one iconic photo from our visit to the epic suspension bridge, where we were holding a small kiss at the end of the bridge. We occupied most of the frame. Except now, when I looked at the photo, somehow there was this shadowy, taller woman behind both of us. She had her hands across both our waists and was blowing a kiss towards the camera. Who the hell? She was in nearly every photo. Evenings out at restaurants, family gatherings, board game nights, weddings, even in photos from our vacations, Milan, Rome. She even fucking joined us inside the Sistine Chapel. The strangest part was her look. I'm not going to beat around the bush. This was some kind of photoshopped model, like a Kylie Jenner Kardashian type. It felt like some influencer turned actress turned philanthropist just so happened to bump into two bland Canadians. It didn't look real. The photo was too perfect. There wasn't a single one where she had half her eyes closed or was caught mid-laugh or anything. It's like she had rehearsed a pose for each one. The whole vibe was disturbing. I wanted to confront Dexter the moment I saw this woman, this succubus, this whatever she was. But he went for a bike ride to clear his head. It was very typical of him to avoid confrontation. Originally, he was supposed to come back, and then we'd both head to the restaurant together. But he didn't come back. Dexter texted me instead to come meet him at the restaurant, that he'll be waiting there. What the fuck was going on? The restaurant was a Japanese omasake bar. Small venue, no windows. This was one of our favorite places because it wasn't too overpriced, but still had a classy vibe. I felt a little betrayed that we were using my favorite date night restaurant for something so auxiliary. My sense of betrayal ripened further when I arrived 10 minutes early, only to see Dexter already at the table, and he was sitting next to her. If you could call it sitting. It almost looked like he was kneeling, holding both of her hands, as if he had been sharing the deepest, most important secrets of his life for the last couple hours. I could hear the faint echo of his whisper as I walked in.
So glad this could work out this way.
For a moment, I wanted to turn away. How long have they been here? Is this an ambush? But then, Sunny spotted me from across the restaurant.
Mia, over here.
Her wide eyes glimmered in the restaurant's soft lighting, zeroing in on me like a hawk. Somehow, her words traveled 30 feet without her having to raise her voice.
Mia, join us.
I walked up, feeling a little sheepish but refusing to let it show. I wore what my friends often called my resting defiant face, which can apparently look quite intimidating.
Come sit.
Sunny patted the open space to her left. Her nails had to be at least an inch long. I smiled and sat on Dexter's right. Sunny cut right to it.
So, Dexter says you've been having trouble in your relationship?
It was hard to look her in the eyes. Staring at her seemed strangely entrancing. The word tunnel vision immediately came to mind, as if the world around Sunny was merely an echo to her reverberating bell. Trouble? No. Dex and I are doing great. I turned to face Dexter, who looked indifferent, as usual. I wouldn't say there's any trouble.
I meant in your relationship to our agreement.
Sunny's smoky voice lingered on each word.
Dexter says you're trying to back out of it?
I poured myself a cup of the green tea to busy myself. Anything to avert her gaze. However, as soon as I brought the ceramic cup to my lips, I reconsidered. Am I even sure this drink is safe? I cleared my throat and did my best to find a safe viewing angle of Sunny. As long as I looked away between sentences, it seemed like the entrancing tunnel vision couldn't take hold. Listen, I'm just going to be honest. It's very nice to meet you, Sunny. You look like a very nice person, but I don't know you. Like, at all.
Don't know me.
When I glanced over, Sunny was suddenly backlit, like one of the restaurant lamps had lowered itself to make her hair look glowing.
Of course you know me. We've known each other since high school.
As soon as she said the words, I got a migraine. Worse yet, I suddenly remembered things. I suddenly remembered the time we were at our grade 11 theater camp where I had been paired up with Sunny for almost every assignment. We had laughed at each other in improv and belted from our belts in singing. Our final mini project was a duologue, and we were assigned Romeo and Juliet. I can still feel the warmness of her hand during rehearsal.
And even after high school,
Sunny continued, looking at me with her perfectly tweezed brows.
Are you saying you forgot our whole trip through Europe?
Bright purple lights, music festival, Belgium. Some of these dance floors apparently let just about anything happen. But she was always there for me. She would always be there for me. I smacked my plate, trying to mentally fend off the onslaught of so much imagery. It's not real. It feels real, but it's not real. It can't be real.
Well?
Dexter asked. He was offering me some of his dynamite roll. When did we order food? I politely declined and cleared my throat. There was still enough of me that knew Sunny was manifesting something. Somehow, she was warping past events in my head. I forcibly stared at the empty plate beneath me. I don't know what's going on, but both Dexter and I are leaving. Dexter scoffed.
Leaving? I don't think so.
No one's leaving until you tell us what's wrong.
Sunny's smoky voice sounded more alluring the longer I wasn't looking.
That's how our meetings are supposed to work, remember?
I could tell she was trying to draw my gaze, but I wasn't having it. I slid off my seat in one quick movement. Dexter grabbed my wrist. Hey! I wrenched my hand. Let go! We struggled for a few seconds before Sunny stood up and assertively pronounced.
Darlings, please. There's no need for this to be embarrassing.
Dexter let go. I took this as an opportunity and backed away from the booth. And what a booth it was. The lighting was picture perfect. Sunny had the most artistically pleasing arrangement of sushi rolls I'd ever seen. Seaweed, rice, and sashimi arranged in flourishes that would have made Wes Anderson melt in his seat. I turned and bolted.
Mia!
Dexter yelled. At the door, I pulled the handle and ran outside. Only, I didn't enter the outside lobby. I entered the same sushi restaurant again. The hell? I turned around and looked behind me. There was Sunny, sitting in her booth. And then I looked ahead, back in front. Sunny, sitting in her booth. A mirror copy? The door opened both ways, into the same restaurant. What the... I tried to look for any other exit. I ran along the left side of the wall, away from Sunny's booth, towards the washroom. There had to be a back exit somewhere. I found the washrooms, the kitchen, and the staff rooms, but none of the doors would open. It's like they were all glued shut. What's going on? What is this? Wiping my tears, I wandered back into the restaurant, realizing in shock that we were the only patrons there. We were the only people here. Everything was totally empty except for Sunny's beautifully lit booth. She watched me patiently with a smile. What is happening? There was no use hiding the fear in my voice.
What is happening is that we need to renegotiate.
Sunny cleared some food from the center of the table and presented a paper contract. Relationship with Sunny. Parties involved. Primary girlfriend, Sunny. Primary boyfriend, Dexter. Secondaries, Mia, Maxine, Jasper, Theo, Victor, Noe, Mateo, Claudine. Tertiaries, see Appendix B. Date redacted. The changeover. Mia will be given 30 days to find new accommodations. Dexter recommends returning to her parents' place in the meantime. Mia is allowed to keep any and all of her original possessions. My jaw dropped. What the fuck? Avoiding Sunny's gaze, I instead turned to Dexter, who stared at me with a loosely apologetic frown. Dexter, what is all this? It's saying I have to move? We just moved in together like 6 months ago. You can't be serious. He cleared his throat and flattened his shirt across his newly formed pecs and six-pack? What is going on?
I'm serious, Mia. I've done some thinking. You don't have what I want.
There was some kind of aura exuding from Dexter now. He looked cleaner and better shaven than before. His cheekbones might have even been higher, too. I didn't know how much of this had to do with Sunny's influence, but I tried to see past it. I spoke to him as the boyfriend I had dated for over 2 years. Dexter, listen to me. I'm telling it to you as straight as it is. Something's fucked. Don't follow Sunny. I pointed at her without turning a glance. You were like entranced or something. If you care at all about yourself, your well-being, your future, just leave. This is not worth it. This isn't even about me anymore. Your life is at risk here. Sunny laughed a rich, lugubrious laugh and then drank some elaborate cocktail in the corner of my eye.
Well, I want to stay with her.
Dexter said.
And you need to sign to make that happen.
His finger planted itself on the contract. Dexter, you can't stay.
If you don't sign...
Sunny's smoky voice traveled right up to both my ears as if she was whispering into both at the same time.
You can never leave.
Suddenly, all lamps in the restaurant went out. All the lamps except our booths. It's like we were featured in some commercial. Sunny stared at me with completely black eyes. No iris, no sclera. Pure obsidian.
Sign it.
All around me was pitch darkness. Was I even at this restaurant anymore? A cold, stifling tightness caused my back to shiver. I signed on the dotted line. My curlicue never looked better.
Good.
Sunny snatched the page away, vanishing it somewhere behind her back. She smiled and sipped from her drink.
You know, Mia, I don't think Dexter has ever loved you to begin with. Let's be honest.
Her all-black eyes found mine again. I was flooded with more memories. Dexter forgetting our anniversary, his inappropriate joke at my dad's hospital bed, the time he compared my cooking to a toddler's in front of my entire family. My headache started to throb. In response, I unzipped my purse and pulled out my pepper spray. I maced the fuck out of Sunny. The yellow spray shot her right in the face. She screamed and turned away. Dexter grabbed my arm and I grabbed his in return. Now, Dexter, let's get out of here. Forget Sunny. Fuck this contract. But he wrestled my hand and pried the pepper spray from my fingers. His chiseled jawline abruptly disappeared. He looked upset. His face was flush with shock and disappointment.
I can't believe you, Mia. Pepper spray? Are you serious?
Suddenly, the lights were back, and we weren't alone in the restaurant. The patrons around me looked stupefied by my behavior. People around began to cough and waft the spray from their table. I stepped back from our booth, which looked the same as the other booths. Sunny was keeled over in her seat, gagging and trying to clear her throat. A waiter shuffled over to our table, asking what had happened. A child across from us began to cry. I tore away and sprinted out the doors. This time I had no trouble entering the lobby. This time, I had no trouble escaping back outside. I moved away from Dexter the next day. I told my family it was an emergency. They asked if he was being abusive, if I should involve the police in the situation. I said no, because it wasn't quite exactly like that. I didn't know exactly what was going on, except that I needed to get away. I just wanted to go. After that evening, 30 months of relationship had just gone up in smoke. All my memories of Dexter were now terrible. I figured some of them had to be true. He was far from the perfect boyfriend, but for all of them to be rotten? That couldn't be right. Why would I have been with someone for so long if they were so awful? In the effort of maintaining my self-respect, I convinced myself that Dexter was a good guy, that his image had been slandered by Sunny, which is still the only explanation I have, that she altered my memories of him. I'm sorry I couldn't help you, Dexter, but the situation was beyond me. I hope you're able to find your way out of it, too. There's nothing else I can do. Although I've distanced myself away from Dexter and moved back in with my parents in a completely different part of the city, I still haven't been able to shake Sunny. She still texts me. She keeps asking to meet up. Apparently, we're due for a catch-up. I see her randomly in coffee shops and food courts, but I always pack up and leave. I don't know who or what she is, but every time I see her, I get flooded with more bogus romantic events of our shared past. Our trip to Nicaragua, our skiing staycation, our St. Patrick's Day at the beach. It's reached a point where I can tell the memories are fake by the sheer volume. There's no way I would have had the time, not to mention the money, to go to half these places I'm suddenly remembering. So, I'm saving up to move away. Thanks to my family lineage, I have an Italian passport. I'm going to try and restart my life somewhere around Florence, but who knows? I might even move to Spain or France. I know it's a big, sudden change, but after these last couple months, I really need a way to reclaim myself. I just want my own life and my own inside my head back. I want to start making memories that I know are real. Places I've been to, people I've seen. I want memories that belong to no one else but me.
It was 5 of us in total. Me, Ty, Matt, Reese, and the pilot. His name was Rick. Old guy, maybe late 50s. Worn out hoodie, work boots laced to the ankle. Didn't say much beyond basic safety instructions. He met us in a clearing past the last subdivision, just this empty stretch of field that smelled like burned grass, no fences, no signs. The basket was already upright, balloon half filled and swaying. Ty booked the ride on a whim. Found it on some forum, said that it'd be about 45 minutes in the air, sunset flight, smooth, scenic. The post said, bring a jacket. That was all. We took off at 7:15. Still light out, barely. The burner roared overhead, loud but somehow comforting, and the balloon rose clean. No lurch, no pull, just this silent lift that made the whole thing feel like a trick. Rick barely looked at us once we were up. Just worked the burner, adjusted the cords while we passed our houses that looked like Monopoly pieces. The air felt thick with sun-warmed silence. At first it was fun. Ty cracked jokes, Matt was filming on his phone. Reese leaned over the edge more than I was comfortable with, spitting once just to see how long it took to disappear. I was quiet, watching shadows crawl across the ground as the light slipped west. It felt calm. Until it didn't. I can't say exactly when it changed, maybe 15, 20 minutes in. The trees looked darker, longer. The fields were endless. No more houses, no roads, just an ocean of green that turned black the second the sun dropped below the hills. I looked at Rick. He was still standing with one hand on the burner valve, staring ahead like he was waiting for something. His expression hadn't changed since takeoff. Ty asked, "How long until we come back down?" No response. Rick didn't move, he didn't blink. Reese laughed nervously. "Hey man, you good?" Still nothing. Matt reached out and touched his shoulder. Rick didn't react, he was breathing, but stiff, frozen, like he'd fallen asleep with his eyes open. The burner fired again. Flame roared above us. We were still climbing. I could feel it in my ears. Pressure building. Wind had vanished, the trees were just a dark smear now. No lights below, just no signs of life. "I think we're too high," I said. Reese stepped back from the edge. "I don't see anything anymore. No town, no glow. Shouldn't we be seeing, like, street lights or something?" Ty's voice was tighter now. "What is this, man?" Nobody had an answer. Then Rick moved. Not much, just a shift in his weight. A small turn, his eyes scanned past us, not quite making contact. He let go of the burner, walked to the edge of the basket. No build-up, no words, no warning. He climbed over the edge. We all froze. Ty grabbed the side. Yo, what the hell are you? But Rick was halfway over. One leg dangling, calm as anything. And then he stepped off. Gone. No scream, no thud, no flutter of clothes, just gone. We rushed to the edge, looked down. Darkness. At first I thought I saw something. Movement below, a shadow against shadows, then Reese spoke, almost a whisper. "There's another one." "What?" Matt asked. "Look," he pointed. Below us, another balloon. Identical, same striped envelope, same wicker basket, same shape. 4 figures inside, all standing, all looking up. I followed Reese's gaze upward. Above us. Another balloon. Same balloon. 4 more figures, all facing down. None of them moved. The air got colder. Matt stepped back, shaking his head. The fuck is this? What is this? Reese started pulling the emergency cord over and over. Nothing happened. We're not descending, I said. Why aren't we going down? The burner hissed again. Still climbing. The 4 of us pressed in close now. No one talking, just breathing harder, watching the balloons above and below like mirrors in the sky. They weren't reflections. They weren't delayed. They weren't random. Each one of them was us. Same heights, same builds, same silhouettes. Matt spoke, voice tight. That's not possible, right? That's not... Shut up, Ty said. Just shut up for a second. The balloon above us was drifting lower, slowly, like it was being drawn to us. I felt at first a low shift in the air pressure, like something large was coming towards us without making a sound. Then Reese stepped towards the edge. Matt caught his arm. Don't! Reese didn't look at him. Didn't say anything. He climbed up. I moved to stop him. Too late. He stepped over. Gone. Just gone. We rushed to the side. Balloon below, 3 figures now. Ty started backing into the corner of the basket, staring at us. Then down, then up again. His voice was cracking. He's down there. That's him. That's Reese down there. Matt was breathing heavy. This isn't real. This isn't real. I leaned back against the burner frame. My chest hurt. My fingers were numb. Above us, the balloon was closer. Much, much closer. I could make out details now. One of the figures was leaning towards, elbows on the edge, looking straight at me. He didn't blink. I think he was me. It's just 3 of us now. Me, Ty, and Matt. Reese is gone. Rick too. The balloon keeps climbing. The one above is maybe 50 feet away now. I can see its stripes more clearly. Yellow, red, dark green like ours. The envelope flickers softly in the moonless dark, almost glowing from the heat of its own burner. And the people inside, they don't move. They just stare. I tried yelling. No reaction. Ty won't stop whispering. It's like he's talking to himself. But low and fast, like he doesn't want us to hear. I saw his jacket, he says. Reese. He's wearing his jacket down there. Matt finally snaps. We don't know that. You didn't see anything. I did, Ty hisses. Louder now. You just don't want to believe it. They start arguing. I can't follow it. I'm focused on the horizon. if there even is one. It's all black now. The air's thin, cold. My skin feels dry, like my body's trying to shrink itself. And then I see the lights. Just 3, out in the dark below us. A faint glow, barely visible at first, and then clearer. A barn. Wide and sagging in the middle, one side caved in. A factory, windowless except one tall smokestack with a faint, flickering light behind a window near the roof. A church. Long, narrow, crooked spire pointing into the void. We pass over them. Did you see that? I ask. Matt nods. Yeah. Ty doesn't answer. He's pacing, arms crossed, tight across his chest. His lips are moving, but he isn't saying anything out loud anymore. 5 minutes later, maybe 10. And then the buildings come back. Same exact buildings. Same broken barn, same crooked spire, same flickering factory window. Okay, Matt murmurs. That's not possible. That's not... I counted the shingles, I whispered. It's the same barn. Ty's in the corner, knees pulled up to his chest now. We drift in silence. The burner fires again, and now I realize something worse. We're not just drifting past the buildings, we're stuck on them. A loop, like a cheap simulation. Like the world below was just wallpaper, the same strip of terrain playing again and again and again. Where the hell are we? Matt whispers. No one answers. The balloon above, closer now. I can see the face of the one leaning over. He's got my build. My shoulders. His head tilts slightly when I move, like a reflection that's lagging. And then Matt goes still. His eyes are fixed on something behind me. Someone's coming down. I turn. From the balloon above, one figure is climbing. Hand over hand, slow down the rope netting, legs swinging slightly with the breeze, steady. No fear in how he moves, like he knows exactly where he's going. I take a step back, head thudding hard enough to hurt. Ty starts rocking now, mumbling something rhythmically, faster and faster. Matt stares at the climbing figure like he's frozen. And then Matt bolts. He doesn't say a word, just runs to the edge and jumps. He doesn't hesitate, he doesn't cry out. Gone. I spin, I grab the side. Balloon below, 2 figures now, me and Ty. I stagger back, my breathing too fast. I feel like my body's turning inside out. The figure from above is almost here. I could hear the soft creak of the rope ladder now, the wooden clunk of his foot landing on the basket. I don't want to look. But I do. He stands a few feet away. Same height, same jacket. Same hands. Face in shadow. But I know. I know it's me. He just stares. Tilts his head, then tilts it back the other way, not mocking. Not curious, just copying. Ty finally screams. It's sudden and it's raw and it's loud in the dead air. He jumps to his feet and points. "There's more," he yells. I look. The balloon below, it's no longer just one. There's two. Stacked, slightly offset, both rising. And above us, another's appeared. Higher still. I don't understand. It's not just one above and one below anymore. It's layered. Dozens of them, going up, going down. Some of them have baskets filled with people. Some of them have none. Some have me. The one in our basket hasn't moved, still staring, still watching. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Ty backs away, arms trembling. Then he grabs the burner valve and yanks it. The flame shoots up with a scream of gas. He pulls again and again. No control, just panic. "We have to get out," he mutters. "It's going to keep going. It doesn't end." I shout at him, but it's no use. He's lost it. He steps to the edge, 1 foot over. "No, Ty!" He looks at me. Just once. And then he falls backwards into the darkness. The balloon below, just one figure now. Me. And the other. He's still staring. We're both standing here in the same basket. The burner cuts off. No flame, no sound. No movement. We just float. Above and below, copies of us. I sit down slowly, staring into the black. Then I hear the wind shift just a little. The copy of me walks over. Sits beside me, not touching, just sitting. We stare out together at the horizon, where the barn, the factory, and the church repeat again for the 5th time. I'm not sure which one of us is the real me anymore. I've been writing this for a dozen or so cycles now. If you can see this, then I guess my phone has reception. And you know what I've had to do. I've never been the kind of guy with a career. I was more the odds and ends type, whatever paid the bills, construction, delivery, even telemarketing for a few miserable weeks. That's how I became a Jihatsu, a night mover. See, in Japan, the Jihatsu are known as the evaporated, the people who disappear without a trace. They want a fresh start, away from debt, stalkers, or just the burden of the life that they've built. But there's another side to it. The ones who help them disappear. That was us. We'd show up after dark, no lights, no noise, pack up everything, and leave, as if nothing had ever been there. The less we knew about the clients, the better. No real names, no questions, cash only. Most of the time, the jobs were pretty straightforward. We'd move people, escaping abusive relationships, financial ruin, shady business deals, ones that went belly up. Sometimes it was kind of sad, quiet families, hollow eyes, kids clutching toys as they vanished into the night. Other times it was almost too easy. An empty apartment, bags already packed, just a quick grab and go. I learned not to ask about what was left behind. But not every job was easy. Some of them I still have nightmares about. First job was this woman. Thin, wild hair, darting eyes, like she was waiting for someone to burst through the door any second. We got the call at night, like usual, and when we arrived, she was already waiting, clutching her arms like they were the only thing holding her together. She didn't say much, just rushed us inside, glancing over her shoulder at every little sound, creak of a door, hum of a passing car. Every time something happened, she'd freeze, then whisper, "Hurry, we need to move faster. Keep quiet, please." At first I figured it was just another case of someone running from an abusive ex, which, it wasn't uncommon for us, but this was different. It was the way she kept looking out the window that started to get to me, like any second someone might show up. My partner, Kenji, tried to crack a joke to ease the tension, but she just glared at him, wide-eyed, hissed, "Quiet!" Once everything was packed, she didn't even ride with us. She just told us to meet her at the new place, way out in the country. She took off without another word. Our truck rattled along the empty roads for what felt like hours. We pulled up to this old, isolated house. It was quiet. No lights, no signs of life. We waited and waited. But she never showed. We called her phone, we left voicemails, we sent texts. Nothing. We didn't know what else to do. We ended up just unloading her stuff into the house, just like she'd told us. By dawn, we were exhausted, we were confused, and more than a little spooked, so we left. A few days later, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I looked her up out of curiosity. And it turns out she wasn't just running from an ex, she was mixed up with the Yakuza. A snitch. Word was she was trying to testify against some very dangerous people. The cops suspected she'd been followed the night we moved her, likely taken care of between her old house and the new one. It was scary to think how close we were to death, just minutes from it. I tried not to think about what would have happened if she'd driven with us. The second job was in an old, creaking apartment building. We were called to move an elderly man, someone who looked like he belonged in that place, tucked away from the world. Forgotten. When he let us in, I knew right away this wasn't going to be a normal job. The apartment, it was filled with strange trinkets, objects I couldn't name, artifacts that looked ancient. These were statues with twisted faces, masks with hollow eyes, symbols painted on the walls in faded reds and blacks. The air was thick, kind of thick that makes your body extra heavy. The others got to work, packing boxes, wrapping up the artifacts as carefully as they could, but I couldn't shake the feeling the room was watching me. Then, as I was lifting a box, I noticed a door across the room, one that I was sure hadn't been there before. It was just there, dark and slightly ajar. I glanced around, but no one else seemed to notice it, so I walked over and opened the door. Inside was another room, cluttered with more of those artifacts. I stepped in, trying to get a closer look at a strange, small statue covered in symbols, but when I turned back to leave, the doorway was gone. Panic shot through me. I swiveled on the spot, thinking I'd just gotten turned around, but now there were two doors on the opposite wall. I chose the one on the right. I walked through, only to find myself in another room, nearly identical to the last, with the same dusty shelves and dark corners. The walls seemed to stretch and bend, twisting in ways that didn't make sense. I called out to my coworker, but no one responded. My voice just echoed, lowering in tone until it didn't even sound like mine. I walked faster, every doorway leading me to another room that looked the same as the last. It was as if the apartment was folding outwards from itself, trapping me in some kind of expanding nightmare maze. The walls began to narrow, closing in, and I started to run. Every doorway was a dead end, a mirror of the room before, filled with more statues, more hollowed-out masks watching me. My breath came in short gasps, and every time I looked over my shoulder, I thought I saw a shadow moving in the corner of my eye. The further in I went, the more I saw the shadow dipping out of view just as I turned to see it. I lost track of time. Every step, every turn led me deeper into the labyrinth of rooms. I shouted, I banged on walls. And all the while, the shadow got closer. The air grew heavier, suffocating. My chest tightened. The shadow was starting to get darker, more detailed, like it was slowly forming into something solid. I started to smell something rotten, like old meat from an animal's breath. I was exhausted and about ready to give up completely. Let whatever would happen, happen. But then I saw a faint light through a doorway ahead. I bolted towards it, nearly tripping over my own feet as I pushed through the door and staggered back into the main room. I glanced back, half expecting to see the twisted maze behind me, but it was just a wall. The doorway was gone, as if it had never existed. Everything was just as it was when I went into the nightmare maze. Time hadn't passed a single second while I was gone. A month later, we started working on the Fujimoto Danshi complex. That was the last time I worked as a Jihatsu. We were called in late to an old decaying apartment building, the kind that hadn't seen a new coat of paint since it was built. The family that hired us, they were strange, even by our standards. The father answered the door, tall, rail-thin, pale as death. His skin looked translucent, almost bluish in the dim hallway light, and he didn't smile, just nodded once and waved us inside. The mother wasn't any better, silent, watching us with dark, sunken eyes like she hadn't slept in days. They both seemed like they were holding something back, like we were intruding on a private moment. But avoid the room at the end of the hall until the very end, said the father, his voice cold and distant. We didn't ask questions. We never did. Just nodded, got to work. The apartment was huge. It was bigger than any I'd ever seen in the city. High ceilings, ancient wooden floors, thick velvet curtains that blocked out all the light. It felt like stepping into a different century. As we moved through the place, loading up the truck with old furniture and boxes, the feeling of something being off only grew stronger. The air inside was stale, thick with the smell of dust and something else, something rotten. The father hovered near the back of the apartment, watching us with cold, sunken eyes, and the mother disappeared into the room at the end of the hall, leaving us almost completely alone. An hour ticked by. We were almost done. There was just one room left. The room they told us to avoid. We had just started packing up the last boxes when Riku winced. I looked over and saw him clutching his hand. He cut it on a loose nail from one of the old crates that we were moving. "You good?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Riku nodded. And the father appeared again, pale and silent. And he glanced at the small pile of remaining boxes, then toward the door at the end of the hall. "It's time," he said. Without another word, he opened the door to the forbidden room. Out stepped this young girl, barely a teenager by the look of her. Skin as pale as her parents. Her hair hung limp around her shoulders. Her eyes were wrong. Too wide, too dark. She moved like she was half asleep, till she caught the scent of something in the air. The little girl froze mid-step, her head snapping towards Riku, her eyes locked on his hand, and something primal, something savage flickered across her face. It happened so fast, I barely registered it, but I saw her nostrils flare, and then she attacked. It was like a blur. A flash of pale skin and teeth as she lunged at Riku, sinking her teeth into his neck before any of us could react. The scream that tore out of him was like nothing I'd ever heard. We all froze for half a second, too stunned to move. And by the time we recovered, Riku was already slumped on the floor. Half of his neck was gone. The father's eyes went wide briefly, then calm. Oh no. The girl wasn't dead. She crouched over Riku, and when she lifted her head, her eyes burned with something feral, something inhuman. Then she went for the next guy, Yasu. Yasu ran out the front door. The little girl chased after him. The mother appeared in the doorway now, eyes wide in panic. "Itsumi!" But the mother wasn't going to have any control over her now that she was feral. In fact, she wouldn't even have control over herself or her husband. I watched as the mother and father smelled the air, and they lost control of themselves. I grabbed the nearest thing I could. It was some old lamp, and I swung it at the mother, but she was too fast, too strong. She dodged, her movements fluid, unnatural, as if she could read my thoughts before I even acted, and I just ran. I didn't even think. I just bolted for the door. I turned left to hit the elevators, but found the little girl straddling Yasu's decapitated body. Her mouth dug into his open neck cavity. A scream carried over from my right, and I saw an open apartment door with a tough-looking guy walking out. Behind me, I heard the mother and father scurrying out of the room. I ran past the tough-looking guy into his apartment. I locked the door and heard him banging against it, and then screaming as he was getting torn apart. My eyes scanned the room, and that's when I saw it. His sword just hanging on the wall. I didn't think. I grabbed it. I checked the blade. It was dull as fuck, but, just for show. I still kept it anyway. Outside, the sounds of carnage echoed into the apartment. Screams, snarls, the tearing of flesh. I threw open the window and spotted the fire escape, but it only led one way up. So I climbed. Behind me, I heard the window shatter as the girl leapt out after me, her nails scraping against the metal as she climbed, too fast, too relentless. I swung the sword as she reached for my ankle. It connected. She let out an inhuman shriek as she fell, her body crashing to the ground below. I looked down and I saw her. Her lower half twisted backwards, her head split open, arms bent in unnatural angles, but she kept moving, crawling, trying to get back to the building, and I kept climbing. I reached the roof and collapsed, but only for a moment. I rushed over to the rooftop door and pressed myself against it. I could hear the others below, the bloodlust in their voices growing louder. I blocked the door with everything I could find, and I prayed. Finally, the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon. I listened as the people below screamed as the sunlight through the window was hitting them, but I knew they weren't all gone, not yet. And my only way out was back down through that apartment building. With nothing but this dull sword, I crept back inside. I went through the rooftop door, quietly sneaking into the stairwell. There were 10 floors, with only a few of them still having lights on, so I had to make my way down 10 flights of stairs, most of which were pitch black. As I descended, I realized that most of the tenants had the same idea to make a break for the stairwell, only none of them appeared to make it. The stairs and the landing were horrific, gruesome sights, shredded bodies, organs, bones, blood. It was a slaughterhouse. I was halfway down the stairwell when I heard something below, a low, wet squelch, like skin slapping against blood-soaked concrete. I froze, clutching the samurai sword in my hand, heart pounding. I crept down the next flight, careful not to slip or make any noise. I reached the landing for the floor we'd been working just hours earlier, and I stopped dead in my tracks. The floor was a massacre. Blood spattered the walls, body parts mangled beyond recognition were strewn about, but it was the body in the middle of it all that made my stomach turn. It was Genko, or it was what was left of him. His body was completely torn open, organs spilled across the landing, bones pulled from muscle and tendon. His face, what little was left of it, was frozen in a twisted, agonized scream. The sight of him, someone I'd worked alongside for months, made bile rise in my throat. I had to step over him to keep moving. There was no other choice. I stepped gingerly over his body, careful not to disturb anything, but just as my foot touched the other side of the landing, I heard it. A low, guttural growl from behind me. I whipped around just in time to see Genko's hand twitch. His eyes, once glassy and dead, snapped open, glowing with a sickly red light. Blood began to pool around him, bubbling as if something inside him was trying to force its way out. And before I could react, Genko's body jerked violently. His limbs snapped back into place with a sickening crack, and his mouth stretched open, revealing elongated, razor-sharp teeth. Blood dripped from his mangled face as he let out a feral screech, his arms reaching out for me. He was no longer human. I stumbled backwards, tripping over the stairs as Genko's twisted form lunged towards me. He moved unnaturally, like a puppet on broken strings, dragging what remained of his body across the landing. His hands clawed at the air. I fell down a flight of stairs, the sword slipping from my grasp as I crashed to the floor. My vision blurred for a second, but the sound of Genko's screech shook me back into reality. I got a hold of the sword and kept moving. He was still coming, his body crawling, tumbling, dripping down the stairs after me. His limbs were broken, his muscles were mush, but that didn't stop him. It didn't matter how shattered his body was. There was something in his blood now that kept him moving, kept him hungry. But it wasn't just him. The whole stairwell seemed to be waking up. I scrambled to my feet, slipping on the blood that now coated my shoes. Every step was a nightmare. I couldn't get a grip, couldn't move fast enough. I kept slipping. I fell, sliding down another flight as Genko's screeches echoed through the stairwell, each one louder and more frantic than the last. I could hear them now, others responding to the sound, the tenants, the entire building. It was awake, joining the shredded bodies, coating the floor and walls of the stairwell as they all made chase for me. Above me, doors slammed open. The low growls and screeches of the tenants filled the air, growing louder and closer. They knew I was still here, and they were coming. I pushed myself up, forcing my legs to move, forcing my body to keep going. I was almost at the bottom, just a few more steps. I reached the main lobby, throwing myself through the door and slamming it shut behind me. The door wouldn't hold them for long, but it bought me a few seconds. I looked around for any way out. And that's when I saw her, standing between me and the front doors, looking just as innocent as she had before the attack. It was Itsumi, the little girl. Her skin had healed, though her clothes were bloody and destroyed. She smiled. I didn't stop. I didn't think. I ran straight for her, gripping that sword tightly. She didn't move. She didn't flinch. As I barreled towards her, I rammed that dull blade through her chest, using the momentum to push both of us forward. The It didn't do anything. She wasn't even fazed by it. But as we crashed through the front doors, the sunlight hit her face and she screamed. I shoved her body to the side just as her skin ignited, flames crawling over her tiny frame and reducing her to ash in seconds. Behind me, the tenants burst from the stairwell, screeching and hissing as they chased after me. The sunlight hit them, and they burst into flames one after another, exploding into plumes of ash. I kept running. I didn't look back. I don't know how long I ran or how far. It wasn't until my legs gave out that I realized I was in the middle of the countryside, surrounded by nothing but open fields. And that's when I collapsed. Chest heaving, hands shaking, covered in blood and ash, but I was alive. I never went back. To the job, the building, or even that part of the city. I work in a call center now. I mean, I hate it. But at least now, whenever I get a weird client, I just hang up. Danny's parents told him never to go into the basement. I was over at his place the first time that he tried to open that thick, dark oak door. I remember we were 7 at the time, I think. Him flashing me that cheeky, lopsided smile before standing on his tiptoes and straining for the handle. I remember his dad snatching him away a second later and slamming him back down next to me with a force that brought tears into Danny's eyes. Mr. Johnson was a very big man, and although I'd known him all my life, he had always been a slight source of fear for me. As I grew older, this infantile nervousness around him subsided a little, but he always made me wary. Mr. Johnson knelt, gripping Danny's shoulders. His face was red with anger, but he also looked shaken. I noticed he was trembling almost as much as his son. "Listen to me, Danny." His voice cut like a knife. "You never, ever open that door. Do you understand me? Never. I've told you before, and I'll tell you again, under no circumstances do you go down there." Then he bundled his sniveling son into a tight hug before inviting us to come watch cartoons. Afterwards, I had asked Danny what was behind the door. He told me, in a roundabout way, that it was his basement. He seemed only half interested in the conversation, always distracted by the tinkle of an ice cream truck or an interesting stick. Danny's zealous imagination could take anything innocuous, anything every day, and turn it into something extraordinary. Sometimes I thought that he could actually see the things that he dreamt up. Danny and I had always been friends. We were never really given a choice in the matter. Our families neighbored each other directly, and our parents had known each other since college. They just heaped the infant Danny and I together and waited for a bond to grow. And there was a bond. In the simplest sense, we were best friends. We were always together in the same class at school, in the same scout group. We even ducked into and out of each other's houses like they were connected. For me, there didn't exist a life where Danny wasn't there to get me into trouble, or to get me out of it. Of course, we had our differences. I was always the quiet one, good in school, rarely to be found without my nose in a book. Indeed, if it hadn't been for the influence of the popular and gregarious Danny, I might well have been subject to harsh teasing throughout my education. That was how our unspoken trade-off played out. Danny would vouch for me amongst our peers, seeing that I was invited to games of tag and birthday parties, and I would help Danny with his schoolwork. He never had a head for sums or science, but his weakest spot was English, spelling, creative writing, a rare point of humiliation for Danny. He could never wrap his brain around which words fit to which meaning, or which meanings fit to which word, or what the word was for a particular meaning, etc., etc., etc. Looking back, he was at the very least dyslexic, and probably had other conditions, which meant he struggled in school. Sorry, let me get to the point. Danny's parents told him never to go into the basement. And after the first incident, met by harsh parental discipline, he obeyed the command. Whenever we were at his house, he would stick strictly to his room or the lounge or the garden. But over time, as it always did, Danny's insatiable curiosity grew. His 8-year-old brain feared punishment too much to try opening that door again without intel on what lay behind it, and any questions directed at his parents about the contents of the basement were either ignored or met with rebuking. His parents probably rightfully realized that if Danny were going to gain the smallest morsel of information about that room, or catch the tiniest glimpse of what lay inside, that his wild imagination would create the other pieces of the puzzle, causing his curiosity to become too much to bear. Danny would often bring up the basement in conversation, presenting in childish dialect his latest speculation on what could be in there to my appraising ear: an alien egg, a robot clone, a baby dragon. For my part, I was not terribly interested in the contents of my neighbor's basement, as well as being too timid to ever aid Danny in a break-in. Danny was convinced that his parents were hiding something in there, and it was precisely his parents' caginess in the face of his inquisition which strengthened his theory. His older brother, Aaron, 15, only laughed when Danny brought his theories to him and called him stupid. But then, one day, something changed. That morning when Danny came galloping from his front door to join me on our walk to school, there was a strange air about him. He kept shooting me sideways looks and suppressed smiles as if he knew a secret and was bursting to tell. Of course, knowing Danny, his lips did not remain sealed. "There's a man in the basement." The words came tumbling out of his mouth in a pile, leaving him panting. It caught me off guard. My rational brain couldn't comprehend such an offload of information. "What? What do you mean?" "I heard him whispering through the floor. He heard me, and I unlocked the door. Dad was at work. I opened the door, and there were these dark steps. I could see the man down there, and..." Wait, Danny, you really saw a man in your basement?" Yeah. I heard him whispering through the floor, whispering for help. Okay, stop messing with me, man. No, I swear. I double, triple swear. Only this most sacred of oaths made me pause in my denial of Danny's story. For the first time, I let the thought cross my mind. Was it true? I began to question him hesitantly. "Slow down. What about your dad?" "I told you. He was working late." "Your mom?" "She was home, but I couldn't just ignore it." "She'd kill you if she catches you, man." "She won't. I shut the door afterwards." "So, he whispered through the floor?" "Yeah. Okay, he must have heard me walking around the house. It was really quiet. I heard him whispering. I put my ear to the floor, near the molding floorboard, you know where I mean? And I could hear him. His voice was like really scratchy, like he had a cold or something. He sounded pretty cuckoo, kept repeating himself, asking for help over and over, mumbling about being alone in the dark or something. I resigned myself reluctantly to believe. "Dude, that's really weird. You should tell your parents," I advised. "Well, here's the thing, Cam," Danny whispered, voice crackling with excitement. "What if they're keeping him in there?" "No, man, that's crazy. What do you remember that film Aaron showed us? The one that Mom got mad at him about? There was that guy, the mad scientist. That's what I was going to say. That mad scientist, he kept those 2 dudes in his basement, all chained up. He put that needle in them, when their eyes exploded." Both of us paused to screw our faces up in disgust at the memory. "And then he came in with a knife, and they were screaming, and then
Mom walked in and switched it off. But what if that's what Mom and Dad are doing? Keeping him down in the basement? I took a moment to digest this. Think about it, Cam. All the facts add up. This was a catchphrase Danny had learned off TV. Faced with Danny's, to me, flawless logic, I had no choice but to agree. Looking back, I find it strange, particularly on my part, but more so on Danny's, how we were able to establish such a mental disconnect. How we could wholeheartedly believe that Mr. and Mrs. Johnson were carrying out the actions of a serial killer, and yet harbor no ill feelings towards them. In Danny's case, love them. Our attitude toward them did not change at all. Sometimes we forget how simple the mind of a child really is, how innocent, and conversely, how easy to shatter. Danny filled me in further, explaining how the man had been on all fours, the bottom of the dark steps, and how thin and bony he had looked. Danny seemed to imply that at one point he had made direct eye contact with the man, but he appeared to grow slightly uncomfortable at that point, quickly moving on with his description of the events. He had been able to go down those steps when he heard his mom calling for him from upstairs. Then he had exited the basement, locked the door, and replaced the key behind the toaster where he knew his dad kept it. Over the next week, Danny updated me regularly. He'd been unable to find a moment where it was possible to open the door again, but he told me that at a few quiet moments in the evening, he had whispered through the floor to the man, and the man had occasionally whispered back. He was careful not to let his parents catch these strange conversations. Doing so would alert them to the fact that he knew their secret. He was always vague about the exact contents of those talks to the floor. I took this as a way of him guarding his secret like a serpent guards its hoard of treasure. But that Sunday, Danny granted me access to the treasure trove. Like most Sundays, I arrived at his house early in the morning, ready for a day of cartoons and fort building. But as soon as Danny had closed the door to his bedroom, he explained that he had a new item on the agenda. You're going to talk to him today. I didn't have to ask who he meant. Looking back, I'm not sure I even wanted to take part in this eerie ritual. I'm sure I was terrified by the idea of whispering to an unknown man underneath the floor. Danny led me downstairs, led me over to the spot near the moldy floorboard, his communication link. He bade me kneel down, put my ear to the floor, and speak. As it was, I only had to listen. No sooner did my ear touch the floor than I was assailed by a strange sound, almost like a stormy wind or nails on a blackboard. Straining my hearing, I could make out sounds, and then words, and then sentences. My brain came to terms with the fact that it was all true. There really was a man. This man, mere meters below me. I jumped up with a start, heart suddenly racing, sending Danny into fits of giggles, but I wasn't laughing. There was something altogether not right about what was happening. My young mind couldn't place it exactly, but it had something to do with that awful, rasping voice. Slowly this time, I dipped my head again, this time paying attention to what was being whispered to me. Hey. You still there? Help me. Please, kid. You gotta help me. There's nothing down here but the shadows. Shadows all around. Help me. Help me. Help me. Help. 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 This frantic repetition did not come with a rise in pitch, or even a waver in tone or consistency. The speaker spat the words out at a ferocious rate, concentrating only on clarity and speed. They whispered as someone who had learned they must whisper, regardless of how much they want to scream. Slowly, as I listened to the repetition, the begging for aid, I detected a rising urgency. No, was it anger? Yeah, it was discernible now, a clear and growing hate behind the words. Little shit, I'm begging you. Please, please, I'm fucking begging you. Come down here and help me. What are you doing? What are you doing? Help me! Help me! And then as I listened in petrified silence, not breathing, just listening, he began to say other things. I'm not going to put them down here. I haven't spent 20 years in therapy trying to burn them from my mind to put them down here, but just know that from what he said and how he said it, all I could think was that this man, this wretched thing below me, was the most desperate person I'd ever come into contact with. To prostrate himself like that, to abase himself, to make himself little better than an animal, it made me think that he was absolutely terrified out of his mind. I had heard enough. I turned my head away from that crack in the floor and I made my mistake. I looked down. It was only for a second. A second was all it took. I saw his eye. In that dark crack, I saw what I first thought to be a fat cockroach or a bulging woodlouse, some kind of rotund insect, bulbous and chittering. Then the ruptured, dirty brown, shell-like eyelid opened. Time slowed down. The red-tinted pupil frantically flitting, resting on me. The eye was milky white with collections of dank yellow goop collecting in the corners, veins bulging across its surface, giving the impression that it was just about to burst. I couldn't look away. I felt like that blighted eye was staring straight into my soul like a madman, a wild thing. I fell back, let out a cry of fear. I pushed past Danny, running for the front door, tears streaming down my cheeks. I didn't stop until I was under the covers of my own bed, croaking sobs echoing into my pillow. I wouldn't tell my parents what was wrong. Looking back, I wish I had. After a while, guilt and boredom conquered my fear, and I returned to Danny's house. He let me in sheepishly, treading on eggshells around me, unsure of what had caused my reaction. I found my outburst to be humiliating and resolved myself to pretend nothing had happened. Yet I still refused to look over at that door or the spot on the floor where that voice had whispered to me. That evening, shortly before I returned to my own home for supper, Danny and I sat on his bed talking. What are you going to do? I asked him. What do you mean? I mean, what are you going to do about him? A brief moment of hesitation, remembering that horrible eye emerging from the dark. Well, I'm... Gee, man, I don't know. What do you mean? You really gonna let your parents just keep him down there? He doesn't sound like he's having fun. You're right. Danny's eyes gleamed. I should rescue him. No, Danny, I meant like, tell Mrs. Carter or somebody. But Danny was far away. Imagining himself playing the part of the hero, crowds thanking him, the president meeting him, all the chocolate he could eat. I realized forlornly that he would not be persuaded. I'm going to get him out. I don't think that's such a good idea. What about your parents? Danny, if they catch you, they won't catch me. I'm quick, and I've opened the door before, remember? Besides... Danny attempted a macho persona. What are they gonna do? Ground me? No cartoons for a week? He scoffed. Where before punishment had been enough of a threat to deter him, It was now useless. Danny had too much to gain. No, Danny... I attempted to put into words a concept my young mind could not fully realize. Something unpleasant. A darkness hatching at the back of my brain, something beyond being grounded, something beyond the simplistic idea that a parent loves you no matter what. I also think that I didn't believe in my heart of hearts that Mr. and Mrs. Johnson were truly capable of holding someone in their basement against his will. If they were truly capable of hurting Danny. My warning came out as vague and feeble. I think that if they catch you, they're going to do something really bad. But Danny wasn't listening. He explained to me how that night, after his parents had gone to bed, he would sneak downstairs, grab the key from its hiding place behind the toaster, unlock the door, go down those dark, dark steps, and bring the man in his basement into the light. He said that he would be careful, and if he heard his parents coming, he would just lock the door and hide. As I left that evening, he told me that he would tell me all about his escapade the next morning. Looking back, I marvel at how we could have possibly thought our daily routine would just be the same. That night I was racked with fear. Not the same fear that I had felt after seeing that eye. That was short and sharp, painful, like an electric shock. This fear was far worse. It was slow and creeping, slithering around in the pit of my stomach, strangling me. I didn't touch my food. I was sent to bed early. My parents thought I was ill. Danny's parents told him to never go into the basement. And the next day, Danny was gone. I waited for some time on the sidewalk outside of his house, praying to see that cheeky, lopsided grin, but he never came. Eventually, Mrs. Johnson saw me through the front window and came out. "Is Danny sick?" I asked. I already knew, though, what was coming. "No, we thought he'd gone to yours." A look of fear spread over Mrs. Johnson's face. And the nightmare began. Over the next 3 months, I got accustomed to seeing the flashing lights of police cars and seeing cops coming and going through the Johnson home. At first, the Johnsons were panicked. There was no sign of a break-in. The front door was still locked, and the neighborhood was so friendly. Everyone knew each other. There was absolutely nothing which could explain Danny's disappearance. I remember after the first week, adults began talking in hushed tones around me. That must have been when they made the development in the case. On the third day, the story made it onto the local news. The Johnsons were interviewed outside their home. In a short time, their initial panic had faded to anguish and despair, at least from the outside. Only I knew the truth. Danny had been caught. His parents had done something horrible to him. If I had been afraid of Mr. Johnson before, I couldn't be in the same room with him now. I tried to tell anyone who would listen of my secret insight, but nobody would pay it any notice. Indeed, I was scolded by my parents for being insensitive and inappropriate. Over the years, I stopped trying to convince people. My pain just became a numb, Danny-shaped hole, but I never forgot. When I was older, probably around 13, my mother decided it was time for me to know the truth of the case. what they had found at the end of the first week. She explained that Danny's house didn't have a basement. Behind that thick, dark oak door, there was an old, unused supply closet. His parents told Danny to never, ever go in there because they stored bleach and other harmful chemicals inside. Danny had never been told it was a basement. That was pure speculation become fact, a product of his troubles with words and his overactive imagination. Inside that closet, behind the mops and boxes of clutter, the police found a hole. The bricks and planks of one corner ripped away, and in that hole there was a dark, dark flight of stairs, formed from rubble and broken stones. The dark, dark steps led down into the large sewage tunnel directly beneath the Johnsons' house. And in the sewage tunnel, they found many things. A used mattress, a kitchen knife, and the opening that had been made in the top of the tunnel. A chair which had been used to reach the floorboards of Danny's living room to whisper through. There was writing on the wall, scribblings about shadows and being alone in the dark. Danny hadn't been caught. Unfortunately for him, he had made it down there. The police searched the local sewage network and its reservoirs. Nothing. But eventually they found the last clue they would ever find. Several miles away. In an old, decrepit storm drain. Danny's watch. Half submerged in the mud and slime, and a single bloody handprint made by a small hand against the wall of the drain. Elongated along its length where someone had fought desperately to not be dragged away. I was wrong. The voice I heard under the floor that day wasn't the voice of a man filled with terror. It was the voice of a man who was utterly deranged.
Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I just wanted to tell you thank you so much for watching tonight's video or for listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. Once again, my book is available on Amazon. It is the Creepypasta Collections Volume 1 and Volume 2. They're always available if you guys want to check those out. Some of my favorite authors that I've worked with over my career are published in this book. I've curated all of it as well as written the foreword. I hope you guys enjoy it. Check it out. It's in the link in the description down below if you ever want to find out more. And as always, I want to give a very big thank you to everybody who supports me over at Patreon. That's patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta. I cannot thank you guys enough. Thank you guys so much for being supporters. That goes for everybody who was down in the description, as well as AcidSystem, BallarmsTheRat, Blake Rattler, Mendoza, Brenna, BrimstonePandemonium, Caltuna, Chainsmoker Dealer, ChicagoHitman, CoryxKenshin, CronutHit508, CrusaderChocobo, CursepoxPrimarch, Dakota Best, Poulsen, Dante Kinkade, Kraus, Ellie Hutmire, Enchanted Buns, Estebean, Gemma, HIDive nephew, himbojerry, Hour Minute Seconds Time, Jay Keems, Jedis Pet, Jordan Humble, King Crab, Mr. Marcus Splits, Old Penguin, Peaceful Buddha, Psychomel, Red Shadowcat, Remember the Sun, Rinku Star, Salty Surprise, Samara Line, Seclude, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Sky Harbor, Smiley the Psychotic, Sullyman, Tali Sue, the Chavez Brothers. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and sweet dreams.